you think we're going to live in a world in which some of our best friends are actually AI?
As far as like romantic relationships, I think it's interesting. I think you could see a decline in real life marriages. The AI people are going to be real people like, and someone grows up with a person dad and an AI mom, and it doesn't seem to matter.
Welcome to the 70th episode of the Logan Bartlett Show. I am your host, Logan Bartlett, and what you're going to hear on this episode is a conversation I had with Tim Urban. Tim is a writer at the blog waitbutwhy.com, where he goes in on a bunch of interesting topics, including being invited by Elon Musk to write about both SpaceX and Tesla. Tim was also early to artificial intelligence, writing about the path that we were potentially on back in 2015. He's also done explainers on things more simple, like how much time we have left with our parents, and more complicated, like the conflict of the Iraq War. In this conversation, we discuss a number of different things, including who really wants to suppress free speech.
Powerful. Free speech is not the friend of the status quo. You want everyone to have to shut up and do what the powerful say.
As well as genetic engineering and increasing the human lifespan.
If you look at these graphs of human lifespan, there's not one person who happens to live to 150. That's a software problem.
A really fun, wide-ranging conversation with someone that I grew up reading and following, and it was a pleasure to finally be able to sit down with him and talk about all this stuff in person. Now, here's Tim.
Tim, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to talk about a bunch of different things, one of which you wrote a book recently. It took you a little while, which I want to understand what writing a book for 6.5 years actually entails. But the way it opens up, and one of the things that I think you open up a lot of your talks and posts and the book itself is just how society's getting weird. And we're at a point of exponential growth where what 50 years ago looks very different like than 100 years ago versus 200 years ago and all of that. And it's a weird thing to internalize, right? Because everything looks very similar to us every day as we go about it. So at what point do you sort of feel like that kicked off? That is it going back to like the steam engine basically and the Industrial Revolution, and ever since then we've been on this exponential curve of change? Or how do you sort of think about when this started and what the implications are for us as a society as it keeps going and getting weirder and weirder?
Yeah, it's so interesting to like think about, because it's like there's this great story that's better than any fiction story that we're living in, and historians, like, their job is to try to, we don't know the story. Come out, we start off just not knowing what happened, and then the historians like go to try to piece the puzzle together, and archaeologists and whatever. So it's like, it's just so interesting. It's like we're trying to figure out our own story
as it's going on. And we stitch together some narrative that like ultimately might not hold true over some period of time.
No, and it changes, and we're wrong about a lot of things. And then also like what happened is also very relevant to what's happening, because it's the same species creating what happened and what happened. So the technology changes, the knowledge changes, but the people and all the human nature are the same. And it's amazing when you read about the Assyrian Empire in 700 BC, or the Greeks or the Romans or the Mongols, and it's just like there's so much of just like, yep, that looks like this, the Nazis, and it's the same primates doing all of these things.
Yeah, totally.
And so if one of the questions we have about the future is what are the primates going to do now? Where are we headed? It's obviously very useful to it's almost like a wisdom cheat to get to, instead of just experience what you experience in your own lifetime. If there's like a couple wisdom cheats, you can study what happened and like learn those lessons, even though you didn't get to live through them. Learn other people's lessons collectively together. So it's like there can be this like two-dimensional cheating. It's like we can collectively share our own life experience and collectively explore the past and discuss it, so that like as a collective we can be as wise as possible, like way above our actual pay grade for wisdom. But anyway, to your question, like I see two. And again, I'm no historian. This is based on me listening to a bunch of history podcasts and reading a bunch of history books because I'm curious. There seems to be, that get brought up again and again and again, two like major inflection points. And like one is You could go all the way back, cognitive revolution. We start having like language. We can, that's when the first humans start moving away from other primates. But then
that was long and over a very extended period of time.
And it went, so I have this diagram I use, this 1,000-page book. If human history is 1,000, if we've been around for a 1,000-page book, 950 of those pages, that's 95% of the book, is just hunter-gatherers. That's it. So again, maybe there's a cognitive revolution, but it's not enough alone to make the change. It basically, there was like, there was a dormant, massive thing that was like, that could happen. The potential had woken up, but it didn't come together for a long time. I mean, think how long we think of Jesus ago and the Romans. I mean, 2,000 years. We're talking like 200,000 years, 2,000 centuries is how long we were just sitting around hunting and gathering.
What page in that book is Jesus?
Jesus is like page 993.
993.
AD is the epilogue of the book. It's like epilogue AD, the last 8 pages. The people point to the agricultural revolution, right? Which was about, that was about maybe 10, 12,000 years ago. So that is about page 950, let's say, maybe even 960. So 950, 960, you have people, the reason this was an inflection point in progress is, yes, there's a different way to get food, but it was herding and there was hunting and gathering. And it wasn't that like now we had food, more food. I mean, it was, but the reason that it was, to me, in as far as this story, an inflection point is because one of the magic things about humans, again, this dormant thing that happened, once we have this cognitive revolution and now I can take my life experience and send it to you through words, like in a very nuanced way, even if we're not, it's not just about something that's here. I can talk about something that happened last year, and that's crazy. It's a magical superpower. And so a tribe now could over time collect wisdom, collect knowledge together. And I think of it as like a little knowledge tower in the middle of the tribe that's being built. And every generation it gets a little higher. And that's how I'm sure weapons got developed over many generations. Chimps aren't developing anything over many generations. They develop life experience, but because they can't photocopy it into each other's brains, it's just stagnant. So things got better, but the agricultural revolution happens, and now you have 10,000 plus people together instead of 100, 150. And so the knowledge tower just starts shooting up. And then, of course, a giant, mini inflection point happens around page 975, which is writing. Because now, instead of just I can give it to you, the information, if we're in person, and you can give it to someone else, and it's kind of lossy. Instead, now I can put it onto an object. Again, we take this for granted. We think like it's early writing. This is magic. We are taking information in our brains and we're imprinting it onto a rock or a piece of papyrus, and in an imprinted way that anyone else's brain can now take, and then you can go, Of course, just as a side topic, the printing press is so cool when you think about it, because I was hearing something. This is so recent. Like the Lincoln Douglas debates was like this important moment, because it was this moment when the debates happened in front of X number of people, very small, and then they print the transcript and thousands of books, and you get 100 and 1,000x of people reading the same debate. It's almost like it's like an old school recording, right? It's like a book is like a recording of this event, and they were actually getting to like watch the debate, even though in their own living room a year later. It's just bizarre. And so this concept of information spread is just useful sometimes to think about how amazing any of it is.
Sure, totally.
So agricultural revolution,
but most of those were like, I mean, it's sort of slow graphs,
still
or like
really
step
slow
functions along the way.
Yeah. So we talk about inflection point, like in the big scheme of things, like big evolution, like the human history is this blip. So then everything looks really quick. But if you just extend human history out, the agricultural revolution was still, it was, okay, page 950, but 50 pages of this book is a long time. That's AD times 5 or 6. It's epics and eras and just, these. So this was still, it's like, okay, now we have agriculture, which, by the way, it wasn't just like it all starts at 10,000. it rolls out worldwide over like a 5,000 year span, 7,000 year span. And it happens very slowly. And so, it's still quite slow. Like, I don't know what happened in the year 9,000, 8,000, 7,000, 6,000. Like, there are some developments, but they're very slow. It's from my knowledge, it seems from around the year like 3000 BC or so, and maybe it has to do with writing. The speed seems to pick up. At least it could also be that we know a lot more about those times because there was writing. So maybe there was all kinds of things that we just don't know about, and there probably were. But it seems like maybe it's writing, but you start to have these more legit civilizations start to form. Obviously Mesopotamia, and you have all these other. That was like the first, but then all these river valleys around the world start developing these like pretty big cities, with hundreds of thousands of people. Like that's a lot back then. But it's still kind of like a steady. Of course, then you start to have empires, and then you have empire again. Crazy concept. It's like a human, one person, is in charge, is in power over tens of thousands of people. Like that didn't happen in most of human history. That's weird. You had a chief that maybe was in charge of 150 people. Like it's just this unprecedented amount of power held by single humans, the king of Syria or whatever. We can probably say that the second major inflection point is, like you said, steam engine. The Industrial Revolution it's just hard to wrap our heads around what a big deal it was. It basically was the birth of modern civilization. Modern civilization just exploded into the world. And it started us, and it's not just the Industrial Revolution, by the way. I would say it seems like there's like the scientific revolution, which was putting the knowledge tower, the collective knowledge tower, on steroids. Now there was a method for finding the truth that everyone in any language all around the world could participate in and collaborate together. It became a species-wide project to build the knowledge tower. And just the freedom from a lot of like the religious structures for knowledge to just build unfettered worldwide. So that happened in the same ballpark. The Enlightenment basically, innovated on, many previous trials of different kinds of governments and came up with the best system yet, which is the liberal democracy, which is what we all live in now. And, I don't know what percentage, but a large percentage of the world. So the system of government that kind of enabled progress, the best system of government for progress yet formed, the methods for finding knowledge, scientific revolution, and then you have the Industrial Revolution, so we can build and make things in crazy scales and lower the price, and prosperity can just grow. These things all kind of happened around the same time, and so if you think about the 1,000-page book, 250 years a page. We lived at the end of page 1,000, right, by this definition. So 1770s to today, which seems like a long time to us, but it's the last one page. That's everyone who lived in there is on our page of the book. And those revolutions, these things we just talked about, all kind of happen right on page 999, on the border between 999. And so this is why page 1,000 is a crazy anomaly. It doesn't make any sense compared to the rest of anything. Everything about our modern world is brand new, basically. Everything you do today, you live your life, you go into your hot shower, you go to the grocery store, you open your phone, you make a call, you just name a thing you're doing today, and it is basically almost definitely just a page 1,000 phenomenon. Except, ironically, what we're doing right now, talking, goes all the way back to the beginning of the book, which is so weird, or maybe like halfway through the book. Which we can talk about later, but that's like the one thing that I think, and that could change. We might have a different way to do this, but talking is the OG human technology, but almost everything else we do. There were couches before page 1,000, but a nice couch like this would be so much more expensive because you just can't mass produce anything. A frying pan, imagine trying to get a frying pan in the year 1500. It's great, but someone's going to handcraft that for you, and you better be real rich to have a frying pan. Now everyone can have a frying pan because we have these mass production. So the grocery store is just, it looks normal to us. This is crazy. It's everything we might want to eat. By the way, all this human engineered fruit, all this food packaged, preservatives, so it doesn't go bad, and like every kind of everything. You walk around and it's just all neatly on the aisles with like expiration dates, and it's cheap. It's just like so this is the book, and the fact that page 1000 is an anomaly in every way it can be is my like starting place for a lot of what I think about, and a lot of like it's a good place to frame your mind when you start it's a way to zoom out and just remind ourselves what is going on. Right?
Totally. And it makes it seem like how weird, quote unquote, in the sense of how different it is just on that page compared to any other page. And in projecting forward of what the next page is likely to look like, it's probably, if we're following the slope of the line forward, it's probably going to be beyond anything that we can actually comprehend today, in the same way that George Washington in 1776 could not fathom anything going around here. It would just be so mind-blowing.
He would be wrong about almost all his predictions.
Everything would be wrong, right? And I think there was a quote you said, we may be living at the climax of the movie of our world, right? Or like, this could be...
Human movie, yeah.
Yeah, this could be the BC period for whatever's to come. Right?
Well, it kind of feels like page 1001 is probably not going to be like just okay.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be unfathomably awesome in the way that I think George Washington would think today was unfathomably awesome.
Yeah.
Like the life expectancy, the medicine, the phones, the technology, the heated rooms, like the lights, everything, just magic everywhere. Or it's the apocalypse, or maybe it's like the apocalypse light when we just destroy our civilization. So we're still humans here, but we're all back in the Stone Age. It's like, under like local warlords, like trying to murder people for food. Like, so if it goes badly, obviously that's the climax because it's the big end of the movie. It's crazy. After 2,500 centuries, we would be alive at the end, which by the way, shouldn't be surprising necessarily. It seems like, what are the chances? Well, actually, one of the things you might expect before the end is crazy progress, because it's progress that kills you. It's that, right? And so what does crazy progress also involve? Population explosion, which means a lot of people are here for the end. When the population's exploding, this is, I forget the name of the theory, but it's a common theory. It's like population is exploding at the end. I think Nick Bostrom talks about it. It's like, maybe that's something that happens before the very end. And like, so a lot of people are it is not, it's still only a 1 in 15 chance or so, but not like a 1 in 1,000 chance that you're here for it. Or if it's the unfathomably awesome future, I think it's so amazing. Like, I think we conquer mortality, for example. We look back, it'll be like, I think it has to be a new kind of BC AD where whatever page 1001 and on are like is going to be so vastly different. I think it'll have to be just like called a different era entirely than anything before. And I think, we're living on if things go well, we're living on the cusp of that, which is also amazing and crazy. And who knows what the, historians in 1,000 years, maybe the cusp started in 1700s and goes till 2100. Maybe the cusp started in 1990 and goes till 2150. Who knows what the way they'll actually, once they have some hindsight. Maybe we're inside the cusp right now, or maybe we don't realize how crazy things are about to get. And so we're still in BC. It's getting closer, but actually the crazy stuff hasn't even started yet.
There's a few things in there that I want to touch on. And at least you've written about a few different things that I think are to the mainstream weird, including cryonics. You were very early on artificial intelligence and writing about like the implications of it, at least for the mainstream discourse and consumption, brain emulations as well. Are there any other things that maybe you haven't written about, like as we sort of think about the future of what technology or life, are there other things that are kind of, because I want to go through each of those individually, but are there any other things that have been ruminating in your brain about like as we look forward to, obviously I sort of put cryonics and mortality together, like beating mortality. But is there anything else that's sort of in your mind as you sort of fantasize or theorize about what the utopian state of the future could look, or the negative one, I guess, as well? But
yeah, there's a ton. Because we live in a time where there are like 20 world-changing paradigm shifts happening simultaneously. That's the craziness of living at the end of page 1000. So, yeah, you mentioned a few. I would love to write about genetic engineering. What? We can get into our software? So life extension is almost a smaller topic, because I do want to get into life extension. Cryonics is like a subtopic of that, but just in general, what are the prospects of, if you look at these graphs of life extension, of human lifespan, it's such a great story, except it's like pinned down at like a year 100 around, It's just like there aren't even outliers. There's not one person who like happens to live to 150. That's a software problem. Otherwise, it would be some freak, just like a 7'5" NBA player. There'd be a freak 160-year-old. The fact that there's not means there's something in our software that basically says, without question, 100%, this person must be shut down because for the sake of the tribe, whatever it is. I don't think there's some inherent law of nature. I think it is actually like you don't have a 90-year-old who can't see or hear very well, but they run fast, right? Like every single part of the system shuts down simultaneously. And it's sad because once you have this really healthy, awesome, with it 90-year-old and you just know what's coming. It doesn't matter. It's like there is this plan in their software and they will probably not be here in 10 years, even if it seems like they were doing great. So life extension involves, of course, what are the things that do kill the 100-year-old? There's cancer, there's stroke, there's heart disease, there's Alzheimer's. There's not too many things. There's like 4 or 5 things that really kill almost all of us. And then, so you conquer those, but again, it still feels like then, it's, so maybe we're now healthy until 110, but it's like, okay, but how do we elbow this? Think about what we've done with the rest of we've exploded through limitations in so many ways, astronomically, 100x our old limitations, So what's this like nudging 5% with all of our modern tech? And so that's a software problem. And it's like, how can we, so genetic engineering is so interesting. Can we get in there and change the software? I mean, there's also the nanotech that might allow you to replace the cells and things like that. And then of course there's mind upload, which is just fuck the body. Okay, we don't know how to do the genetic engineering and it's too risky anyway. I think right now we're just used to it. We just go out, we daredevil, you go skiing. As soon as actual living 50 centuries is a possibility, the idea that you would do anything to risk, so you'd either have a backed up consciousness or you would be I think pretty careful, because it would just, right now it seems like, okay, worst that happens is I lose a few decades. It's bad. All my instincts go against that happening, but it's a few decades. It's not like, it's a much bigger tragedy if someone was going to live to 5,000 if they die at 80 or 40. So all of those are kind of related to me. I want to get into all of that. Basically the question of mortality, human mortality, involves 7 different technologies, cryonics, mind upload, all of this. And with AI is interesting because it touches all of these. AI can explode it can be kind of like the Industrial Revolution. It wasn't just helping with textiles, right? It eventually turned into the development of electricity, and it turned into every single part of our world progressing. So likewise, I think AI could be something like that, where it's like another inflection point, which is crazy because it's already going so fast. Another inflection point where now everything gets on steroids even more, like steroids cubed now, if it's already squared. I also would love to write about artificial meat. Seems really interesting. I could just, it's a much less big topic, but it's also in some ways a pretty huge topic. It's, it's a lot, livestock is, a major contributor to emissions. Obviously, there's a lot of food inefficiency, which leads to hunger around the world. It's kind of like a holocaust for animals going on that, we might look back on as absolutely horrified, which I think we probably will.
You wrote about it in your book, but it could be very well something that we look back on. We have a really hard time explaining to our grandkids. Yeah, no, it was mass slaughter of animals. And a lot of them were, we knew they were kind of intelligent, but we lined them up and we just killed them. And
a pig is as smart as a dog.
Yeah. And we're just we're pretty fine with it. And we don't really think that much about it.
It's this bizarre thing we're doing where all you have to do is imagine 1,000 golden retrievers in a tiny pen crying and suffering and bleeding, and they never see the light of day. And then they're taken to the thing terrified, shaking, and they have their throat slit. People would react to that almost like they'd react to humans, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe some people more. It would be even worse because it's like this innocent creature. And it's like this sweet, innocent, helpless creature. And that's actually happening.
And we've normalized it.
And I feel like a lot of people know it, and we're just kind of like, ooh, but meat's good, you know?
Are you vegetarian?
No,
Neither am I.
I'm a huge, massive hypocrite.
Yeah, neither. I know it to be true, and in 75 years, my grandkids will watch. Maybe this will exist on YouTube still or whatever, and they'll be like, "So you were aware of all that, and you just kind of laughed about it, and then went about eating pigs?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no, that's all right."
But then we'll look back at people who are like cheering at like witch burnings. We're like, well, barbarians, and it's like they also were like, "This is so awful." Imagine being that person, but like, it's life. Like, it's the same people who did the witch burnings who are now being like, "Well, pork is good." So, I don't know if we have the discipline as a species to actually like stop our addiction to delicious meat. And of course, like it's a great business. But it seems like just, again, the environmental impact is like when you learn about it, you're like, damn.
Oh yeah.
And then, and across lots of fronts, like land, water, just ecosystems, and then the cruelty to the animals.
Yeah. The environmental impact, I'm a techno-optimist in the way that I'm kind of, and maybe this is just blind naivety, I'm kind of like, we'll figure that part out.
Yeah, I agree, but it just also just takes up a lot of land. It's just like, the point is, that's not the reason to stop it, at least to me, but it would just like free up a lot of things. Land,
totally.
Time, space. So
government subsidies.
It's huge. It's this kind of albatross.
Yeah.
So artificial meat is one of those things that when people hear it, like, and I think once we have it, it'll become like almost gross to be eating real. It's like, it's from a real animal.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, there's like actual like veins in there. I want like, and much healthier, better tasting, cheaper eventually. Right now it's massively expensive, right? So this is like the 1960 giant room-sized computer that we have.
Yeah.
Eventually we'll have the iPhone, which will be cheaper, incredibly delicious, and nutritious. It won't be bad for you. And it'll be plentiful. And so I'm saying this I haven't done my deep dive, so maybe I'll get there and be like, actually, this is harder than we thought. We're not going to get there. But it seems to me like something that's going to move in that direction. So that's, to me, is interesting. Transportation is always like, super, like, will we have flying cars? Because that was always like the joke about people in the 60s thought that, and didn't happen, and like we couldn't, that would be ridiculous. And then I talked to some people building some stuff, and I'm like, you're building flying cars. And there's obviously a bunch of hurdles with regulations and noise and safety, but maybe down the road, you hop in your, New Yorkers like to go to the Hamptons.
I'm going this afternoon.
Okay, so it's going to take you how long?
Way too long.
Right. 3 hours of
Probably
hideous traffic.
Yeah. I'm going to Montauk, which is about as far away as you possibly can.
Yeah, you're going to be sitting in traffic. Right. So now imagine instead you call your Uber and you say Montauk, and you get in it, and
it goes up.
It'll probably drive for 12 minutes to one of the nearby takeoff strips. It'll get in a little line, boom, boom, and you're fourth, and then and you go, and now it's 30 minutes, and it lands in a landing strip. Again, waits for a minute, and then drives right to your door. And the crazy thing is, the first time, of course, you'll be, I did it. You people want to hear about it. Like the first iPhone, can I hold it? And then we'll all get incredibly used to it and just be like lying there, not even looking out the window, just like lying there complaining on our phone, or being like, this thing took like 8 minutes to arrive, Do
you ever see the Louis C.K. bit about...
everything's amazing and no one's happy? The Wi-Fi on the internet.
Totally.
The funny thing about that clip is, so he talks about it as, is like, that was one of the first times I had heard of him. He was on...
Conan?
Conan. And that was like, that clip helped like blow him up. And he was saying how the guy next to him was like, there's no Wi-Fi.
Yes,
and he's like,
this is bullshit.
He's like, what are you going to do after this? Partake in the miracle of human flight? But then he had said in another interview once, he was like, oh yeah, there was no guy. That was me complaining. And then I realized it was funnier if I said it was someone else.
That's funny.
It's just a separate point.
Yeah.
But that's such a great point. It's such a relevant point. Like the hedonic treadmill, it doesn't matter how, it's like if you picture the future and you're like, imagine people can live 500 centuries if they want. They die when they're ready. And they all fly around. And no one has to work. And you'd be like, they must be so happy. And that's going to happen. Is unless we've really recoded human nature, which maybe we can do, you're going to get there and they're all going to be depressed and bitching about all the same things, just like we are depressed about
No matter where you get to, you reorient around what the level you're at is.
It's
and
such
your
a shitty quality.
expectation change. And it's true of success. I'm sure you feel this way of like, if you go back 10 years ago or 15 years ago and you were like, I have this blog and I have this book, and people know me for my thoughts, and it's incredible that I get to research and think about interesting things, and then I get gratification from people and all that. But then, whatever, the first week of book sales come out, and you're like, fuck. Well, okay, maybe, if I had done the press tour a little bit better, it would be a little bit higher on the list or whatever. You just recalibrate to some level that like you never could have imagined, right?
I really have a numerical way to measure it, which is that I had an old blog, which, I never was writing it to go viral. It was, it was just my stories about my day, whatever. But I still was really excited when things, got a little attention. There might be 50 readers a day usually. And then sometimes something would blow up and there'd be 800 readers a day or 1,000. And that's even high. Maybe it's more like 250. I'm like, oh my God, people are passing this around. It was hugely exciting, dopamine hit. And then Wait, But Why? Of course, at the beginning, when things are going up, it's accelerating. You feel acceleration in a plane or in a car, and then you stop, and then it hits this constant velocity and it feels like you're still again, right? It's like relativity. It's the same thing. It's when you're accelerating, either up or down, you feel it emotionally. It feels really good or really bad. And when you feel that, it feels like I'll always feel happy about this. Or when it's going down, this will always be this. Nothing could be worse than this, whatever. And then you hit constant velocity, or even you get used to the acceleration, all your emotions settle back into the hedonic treadmill. So for me, Wait, But Why now is getting 1,000x the viewers. And I got used to that, and suddenly I'd be like, oh, okay, just 50,000, whatever. And then I'd be like, ooh, you got up to 250 today. It's it's madness.
Totally. And it's if you saw all those people in a room, that's one of the things.
If I saw the 50 people in a room, I would have been like, my God, I have a whole it's bigger than a classroom, all here to listen to me.
What's funny is I similarly with doing this, I did a talk recently, and 250 people were in the room, and I was anxious. I was like, oh, fuck. And I had to psych myself up to go do it, and I'm like, every single one of these gets whatever, 10, 20, 100 times
any sense.
And I'm just this doesn't make me nervous at all. It's two of us sitting here. But the number of people that are going to see this is so much more than having all the people look at you. It's a weird internalization thing that I've struggled to figure out.
It's a reminder, one of many, that both of these, the gratitude reminder, the fact that you just get used to it, and then this fact that a 250 person live audience seems scary, and a whatever, that 100,000, it doesn't matter how big it is. If it's on the internet, it seems less. It's a reminder that the human brain is not a magical thinking tool that is smart.
Yeah.
It is an organ in our body that was developed to help a hunter-gatherer survive in the wild. That's what it is.
Yes.
And it is amazing organism. And it's amazing how plastic it is, where it can adjust to this totally different world than it was evolved for and actually kind of make it work. But it's not meant to be here, and it's not meant to understand things it's 250 person audience is intuitive to it because they were.
You can see it.
You're the chief, and you're going to fire up your little, tribe to go fight the other tribe. Okay, that we know that. 2,500 people, 25 million people behind the screen or behind the microphone it's the same way that we are. If there's a cockroach on this thing, I would jump up like a baby right now and embarrass myself, but I'll drive in a car and text. Because the cockroaches, the brain is I know that's in the world I was for, that's pre-programmed. That might have disease, that might be scary, right? Driving there's no idea what this is.
Totally.
Right? So there's 100 examples, and it's just the most important thing to remember all the time. Don't trust this thing necessarily. Ask what it is doing and whether it's actually making any sense.
I had a funny one where a family member was it was in the peak of COVID, and they didn't want to get on a plane, and so instead they were going to drive 18 hours down to Georgia. And I was just getting on the plane is so much safer than driving for 18 hours. But there's this weird feeling of control, right, when you're driving versus this scary COVID thing and being on a plane.
The numbers are crazy.
Yeah.
Planes are actually, I read somewhere that being on a plane, in the air, is the safest place you could be on Earth. I think you're the least likely to be murdered or die on Earth.
That's interesting.
In the air, because there's no one can murder you, or it's hard. And so you're actually in the safest place on earth, but it's just,
I forget the stat, but it was like per 10,000 miles traveled, like, or maybe it was 1,000,000 miles traveled or something. And like commercial aircrafts have like 1 death or 2 deaths, and cars are like 650 or something. And it's just like such a funny whatever.
driving is, unless you're like a daredevil person who does like, kind of physical things, like physical scary things, driving is for 99% of us by far the most dangerous thing we do. It's not even a question. Like there's not like for a young person, like 30-year-old me living, or I guess I was 25-year-old me living in LA where I drove a lot. It's like if you looked at like the pie chart of things that might kill me this year, driving must have been 99. Because driving, I was constantly kind of like, ooh, that was a close one. Like, and meanwhile, nothing else. I'm like a young, healthy person. Like, there's no tiger's going to run out and get me. Like, I'm very safe in every other way.
And there's a weird internalization of having the wheel versus not. And that lets you feel like you're in control. But in truth, it's, yeah. No, you haven't written as much in the last 7 years as you've been writing the book. You clearly have other stuff ruminating in your head. Have you missed the process of like going through in a much shorter form and putting some different thoughts out there?
Very much. I really like writing blog posts because, the dumb brain is most aware of like people, actual real people hearing what I'm saying if I'm on stage, right? Same with you. And then a book is the opposite side of the spectrum. It's like the words I'm typing will be read by a much bigger stage than any I could be on. And I can't, but the dumb part of my brain can't conceive of that. So it doesn't feel, the high stakes adrenaline. It's what makes me work hard and perform, and really like, it also awakens my creativity. And it's really hard to get those things with a book. I learned. Blog post is somewhere in the middle where people might see this on, in 3 days. It's some adrenaline, and there's some pressure. There's some deadline pressure. It's like, people are expecting this versus this very open thing, which is, again, it's just, there's something in motivating to the kind of dumb instant gratification monkey in my head about an impending deadline, but also the fact that if I wake up in the morning and I crush it today, I could finish the whole post today. I could finish the whole post. It's gonna go up tomorrow if I really just get in a flow, or the next day if I don't. A book, I'm like, if I crush it today, I'm gonna get from 34% done to 34.5% done. That's if I crush it. If I don't crush it, I'll get from 34% done to 34.2% done. If I do nothing, I'll just stay at those feel very similar.
The incrementality of progress.
It's so depressing. It's so just like, it's so demoralizing being like, I had a great day and okay. It just doesn't feel like it just, so I think this is different personalities. I think some people function great with that. They work great. They like to put a brick down every day, and then there's a house. For me, it was very hard to motivate to put one brick down. It's like the perfectionist in me. I wanted to like do the whole thing, or it's like, I'm just gonna do one brick. And so I didn't like that. Now I am doing another book, but this book I was like, let me learn every lesson I can from this last book. So the topic is 100 topics basically. There's a ton of the things we've already talked about are in this book. It's like everything I'm excited to talk about or write about right now is in this book together. And I gave myself, and I'm like working really hard to keep it like a 1-year deadline. So not 6 years like the last book. Can I do an even better book in 1 year? And I don't know if I can, but I'm trying to like work with my own psychology and be like, look, this is not that smart of a primate here that we're living in. And it's just a fact. We saw what it happened to this primate over this. Let's manage the primate better now. How do we get this primate to do anything? That's what.
What was the 6.5 years of like literally your days of doing it? Like, was it like one day you'd have some breakthrough and write a bunch of stuff down, and then you would go, you have a famous TED talk about watching YouTubes of Justin Bieber's mom or the Tanya Harding, Nancy Kerrigan Wikipedia page.
Those are all real examples.
Yeah, I mean, Tanya Harding, Nancy Kerrigan, crazy story. I mean, I'm glad it's gotten its due now
riveting.
that they've made like
so
movies about it and stuff. It's like you kind of forget some of the weird pop culture things that happen.
Oh, I know. Even just going back to OJ, it's just like you forget. Going back to like 90s kind of, or my wife has become obsessed with like, I think everyone's wife that I know, true crime.
Totally.
And so she'll go back to like Scott Peterson or JonBenet Ramsey. And I'm like, first I'm kind of like, and then I'm like, ooh, this is interesting. I see why this was such a So yeah,
So you're 41?
41.
41. I'm 35. My fiance's 29. And so like a lot of the pop culture stuff, I was in second grade with OJ. I was in eighth grade with 9/11. But like, I kind of remember Branch Davidians and Waco, Texas, but like not really. And so over the years, I love that stuff. So I'll go back and study it. For my fiance, it's her first time learning about all this.
Yeah.
And so that is really fun for me. I'm like, no. Now we're going to go learn about David Koresh.
Totally.
Like this is going to be a really good, or like she missed the Jinx. And so I'm like, we're gonna go learn about Robert Durst now, right? So all these little pop culture things, it's fun for me as like the 6-year-older guy that loves pop culture, going and teaching all that.
She knows about Waco because
Yes.
of me, and I know all the lyrics to every Taylor Swift song because of her.
Oh, interesting.
Because she's actually at the generation. She's 33.
Okay, yeah.
And she claims that like all the teeny boppers at the concert that she just went to are like not the real fans because she is Taylor Swift's age, and she's like, I actually grew up with her. I'm the actual OG fan.
Yeah. I remember Tim McGraw when it came out in 2006 or whatever versus all these teeny boppers. Like that was her whatever original song, and all these teeny boppers weren't even born then or whatever it is.
No, totally. I mean, it's like there's some interview with Billie Eilish where they're like asking her who she's heard of, and she hasn't heard of any of the people that I think of as like house. You know when your dad's like, like Dick Clark, I think, of course, I'm like, I don't know, who's that again? And he's like, that's, that sounds like Brad Pitt to me, right?
Oh, totally. I
And
play a mean game at times, and I'm like, Mick Jagger, what band? And she's like, stop, I don't want to play this game.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is like, it makes me feel old, but also it's weirdly gratifying.
But it's also like, so Mick Jagger was before our time, but it was like close enough that like we all are familiar. But like, I also can't name 10 Rolling Stones songs. Probably, if you played them for me, I'd be like, oh, okay, I know that song. But like my parents for sure can. But then you get to the next generation, and it's just everything. It's like the treadmill's moved 30 years. So Billie Eilish had never heard of the Grateful Dead, and I was like, okay, that is crazy to me because I just feel like they're a household name, but you don't realize it's kind of like parallel universes. And I am realizing also that the internet, in a nice way, actually makes you feel very like not old because. Inevitably, who I'm interacting with on Twitter is a bunch of people within 10 years of me.
Sure.
When I go on TikTok, very quickly it's like, okay, we're not going to be sending you teen stuff. Very quickly it's sending me stuff. Maybe not exactly my age, but like my references. I'll see a thing like, you're a 90s kid when, or you're an 80s kid when. 15-year-olds are never coming across that meme. It's just that the algorithm is never going to feed them that meme. They're going to see you're a 2010 kid when. And so it's almost like the internet segments these parallel universes and keeps us like contained, which I think is nice because if the whole thing was flooded with teen stuff, which is like I think before the internet, it's like all the pop stuff, everything is young people now, and I feel old. I think it's nice because it kind of like makes you feel like your generation still has memes. And
Exactly. You're self-contained, and the
right. I'm like,
Furbies and Tamagotchis still get shown to us
because all those people are still here.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, we're all here. Let's like still have a fun time talking about our generation, and not just be like, oh, that's for the kids now. It's like, well, let's all hang out still. So
it's like my dad. Yeah, I use TikTok, and it's like deck improvement, help TikTok, and I'm like, that's not exactly the same TikTok.
That's when people are like, I mean, I love TikTok, and then I got rid of it when people freaked me out about China looking at my texts. I don't know. I miss it a lot actually, because now I'm on Twitter for You, which I go on one trashy video and then start scrolling, and it's just guy gets his pinky bit off by a shark, fist fight, and it's addictive, but it's trash. And then Instagram Reels to me is just hugely inferior. YouTube flipping it's just a lot of like, I don't know, like Joe Rogan, or it's just like podcast clips. It's just very like these things. TikTok had a variety. I could flip up and see anything, and it was like they mixed from like a really funny comedian doing impressions to like a crazy science fact to like a funny dog video but I just liked it the most. I think it had that. Yeah. So I miss it. And
I've totally ceded to the CCP, like the brain manipulation they're doing to me. I'm like, listen, I need that dopamine hit of the dog videos mixed with like, whatever the comedian mixed with the sports news. So I am totally willing for China to manipulate me.
Okay. I want to, because you're like a smart dude who's decided that it's fine. So maybe is it fine if I just put TikTok back in my phone?
I kind of think so. I sort of think all these things are like when Facebook did the big study on like how they were actually manipulating stuff to see how it changed people's moods and all that. it was so much at the incremental margin, about like 0.1% here to like 1% there, about how they were actually able to manipulate. I
don't care about that. I don't want them like downloading all the contents of my phone and using it as blackmail 10 years from now.
Yeah. I haven't given quite as much thought to all that stuff. I sort of think I am very willing to have the totality of my life, the famous last words when someone ultimately airs the totality of my life. But I'm sort of willing to be out there in some way. And so like whatever they find, I sort of think we're operating in a world.
It's not just me too. It's also like if my texts get leaked, all of my friends' texts get leaked. And that's part of it is like, I'm like, I feel like I would feel really guilty about, and that I guess that goes for, that's why it's my own texts. If I were really worried about it, I would tell everyone I've ever texted.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm not really, it's more like, if it's my text, I'm the epicenter of this disaster.
Totally, that's right. I doubt if it happens, I doubt Tim Urban or Logan Bartlett are going to be the atomic unit
That's
of how we all get
true.
taken down. And so that's sort of at least my justification for it. I'm trading the dog videos and the, the random Shane Gillis clips in exchange for that catastrophic risk. And I assume we're all going down one way or the other if that happens. So
right, at that point, it'll just be everyone's things, and it's just going to live in a whole catastrophe.
It's sort of like once Barack Obama got elected president and like admitted to smoking weed and doing coke as a kid, it's sort of like, okay, we're like, cards are going on the table for presidents now going forward, and I think everyone's going to accept there's going to be some level of like adolescence that's going to be captured.
He admitted to doing coke?
Yeah. I think in his book or something, which is interesting. But yeah. So wait, your process of actually going in and doing the deep dive.
So if I ask you, like, what were you doing on a Thursday afternoon in college? You might have a hard time like remembering exactly. It's like, what was I doing?
Yeah, bong hits. I don't know.
And if you tried to guess and like map out your time, you might actually, I would bet if they went and actually said, well, here's what you really did, it would not be a great reflection.
You know what's funny about that, by the way, is when I took like a month off in between jobs, and during that month, like the first 2 days, I was so productive and reading books and doing my laundry and going out and like seeing parts of New York I hadn't seen before. And by the like week 2 or something, I was like, I have a haircut later that day, so I'm not sure, like, my day's already pretty full. It's just like a funny different, like...
Time is such a mindfuck.
Yeah, it's like when your day's super regimented, it's very easy. It's like, okay, I got a 30-minute window, I'm going to go get a haircut, versus when you had nothing going on all day,
Totally.
Going in to get a haircut feels like the totality of the day.
That is how I feel right now, where it's like, if I have like a meeting at 3, it kind of ruins my day.
Yeah.
It like hangs over my entire day, as opposed to being like, I have clear open. I'm like, how is it going to be coming up? And then when that's done, it's like dinner is a couple hours away. This makes no sense.
Yeah.
And if you just blocked out every hour and you're like, I have these 4 work hours and then this and this, and then it would just, I should do that more, I think, probably. People who work now, there's such an epidemic now of everyone working from home. I think a lot of people are probably struggling in a way they weren't before with like freedom.
Yeah.
Again, our brain in our head is not, it's good at general freedom. It's not good at freedom plus advanced civilization. Like when you have all these expectations and this feeling of if I'm not being productive, I'm wasting time, that like civilization makes us feel. And also our friends are working. So it's like, we don't sound like we can just like be social. It's like, I feel like our brain struggles with that and ends up, it seems like, and if you don't have that, it seems like, how could anyone who can work from home ever be unhappy? Oh my God, your life is amazing. But then when you're doing it, I think actually, you're often, I would guess that the cumulative work from home people are less happy on average than they were when they were working in the office. I don't know. But anyway, so back to what I spent my 6 years doing. And this was, I also like moved a lot. So I was like, oh, that apartment, I was working on it through that apartment and that apartment.
Which is nice milestones, by the way, to have. Like,
yeah, it helps. Yeah, in general, apartments and cities you moved in and relationships you started are always like these.
Yeah, like 4 years of college, living in 4 different places feels like such a long period of time. And then if you spend 4 years in the same apartment working at the same
This was one
job,
of the things that really bummed me out. Is when I realized college is an eternity when you're in it.
Totally.
It's like it's an era of your life.
Yeah.
When you graduate college and you're 22 living somewhere, and you think about senior year of high school, it's like I was a different human. An entirely different world. I was at a different stage in my life. I was a kid. Now I'm a grown-up. And I'm writing this book and thinking, this has been longer than college. So even like I was working on this part 4 years ago. Like I'm on like a new part now, and I look back and I was like, oh my God, this document, this notes doc, which doesn't feel that long ago, is from when a kid was starting college, and now that kid is graduating. That hurt.
Yeah.
And that's part of why I was like, never again. You know, it was just like, that is my personal hashtag never again. Because actually, the finished product, I'm like, you know, it is a pretty long, fully hand illustrated by me, extremely thoroughly researched. Like I read, I just there's like 100 pages of endnotes, and it covers so much, right? And I'm like, that's a 6-year project. I don't. Maybe it's a 3-year project if I'm at my best, but it's not like a just like, that's a beast. It's a giant researched book about society, you know, drawn and written, and revised, and feedback and all that. So the bummer for me was that that wasn't the plan. The plan was a blog post. And then I was like, oh, this is taking so long. This is such a long blog post. I actually got to make it a series. And then I was like, oh, the series is now, the last thing is going to be more longer than the whole series. I got to make it a book. And then I was like, but I'm going to, every time it was like the delusion. It was like, but I'm going to knock this book out really quickly because I got to move on. And then the book takes on forever. And so it was the expectations, you know, it's expectations minus reality equals happiness, right? Reality minus expectations.
Yeah.
So if my expectations were, I'm settling in for a 6-year project on this, then I would have been totally fine. And I don't think but it was the fact that I always thought I should be done by now. This is a problem. This is a mistake. It was like this constant feeling of something is like wrong in my world for 6 straight years. So that was a bummer. As far as like the actual time, like actual writing is a good chunk of the time, but not that much. Because on a good like writing day, I'll write. On a really flow day, I'll write 3,000 or 4,000 words, just like beast. But that's unusual. Usually, I don't know, 1,000 to 2,000 words on a good writing day.
And the totality of the book was how many words?
120,000 words. So I always think in words, and everyone else thinks in pages. Yeah, 1,000 to 2,000 words is like 2 to 4 Microsoft Word pages, 5 Microsoft Word pages, single spaced. So the book was 120, but I wrote at least 300 total. And then most of that was cut and revised. And so I would say, including like the new writing and stuff, I probably wrote, let's say 300 total 1,000 words to make this book. So even there, on a not such a great writing day, 1,000 words, that's still only 1 year, you know, or if I'm not working weekends, which I did. I also crushed my social life. I was just like, because I always felt like it's almost done. So I was working on weekends and stuff. But so that's 1 year. So the time, you know, and a lot of that was, you know, I've written about procrastination.
Yes.
I would procrastinate by tweeting. I would procrastinate by researching too much or just going into a research spiral that was no longer that productive. In some ways, it would make it worse because I would get a book to read a chapter that was relevant, and then I would just get kind of hooked and read. But then not only was that a waste of time, not a waste, you're learning something, but it's not productive. It's not good for work time. But then I'd learn something later in the book. I'm like, that needs to get incorporated. And so with so much time and so much going on in the world, that's another big part of it. Is George Floyd. I mean, it's like I had to blow up this whole section and rewrite a huge chunk of it because there's all this new information, this new thing happened. There's 10 of those examples. The entire Trump presidency happened during the book. So I mean, it was like I was going to say something about Trump, and by the end, I had a whole different thing to say. So there was that going on, and there was just like a lot of different areas, and everything seemed relevant. So then it was like a nightmare of outlining. It was like, how do you wrangle everything from like the history of media to, you know, the way confirmation bias to the history of the Republican Party to cancel culture, to social media and deep far history and human nature and how that maps on to today. And 100 other things. I was like, how do you wrangle that all into one book? And I think, you know, maybe I could have focused in and done something, but I was just, at that point, perfectionism was like, I have to tell this whole story because it's one big story. And so the times passed. Like, my ideal schedule is I wake up in the morning, and this happens rarely, but I've gotten there. And I first little stretches. I wake up in the morning, and I just start writing, and I just like, deep focus, barely look at my phone till like noon. And then the day's a win. And now I can work more, I can dick around. And
that's for a book, or is that for a blog post as well?
In general, that would be.
How do you go about on the blog post side, like picking a topic and then researching it? Like what do you actually do to like, where do you start?
Yeah.
Do you just start, is it a YouTube rabbit hole? Is it talking to experts in the field that I'm sure it's some of all the above, but like, how do you actually go about doing that?
Just say cryonics.
Yeah.
I will say, okay, I've heard about this thing, freezing people after their death. And especially I've now heard about it from some very smart people. That's what got me interested. Because I heard about it with Ted Williams, like a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is like for kooks, whatever. And then I heard, but then much more recently, like 2013, 14, 15, I'm hearing some like very smart people say, no, this is a very important technology. People should do it. I'm like, really? So, okay, that's all I need to know, that it's a good topic. Whether it ends up being something I agree with or not, the fact that I'm like, I didn't know this was a real thing. And it's such an interesting thing to be a real thing. I now know for sure, because my only focus group is myself. I know there's a lot of people out there just like me, right?
Yeah. Is that your North Star in this stuff?
Yeah.
It's just like what I find
there's not that, we're all not that unique. Like, there's just a lot of other people who happen to share my interests, my sense of humor, and the exact place I am with that topic, where they also would be interested in it, but they haven't learned about it yet.
Yeah.
That's what AI, when I took it on, I was like, this is a good topic, because I'm sure a lot of other people are saying, what's this thing I keep hearing about? Topic is easy there. Now that part's easy. I pick it, and now I'll just open Chrome, and I'll maybe the very first thing I'll do is just like read the Wikipedia page. It's just it just lays out the topic in general. And then at that point, I'll have a little bit of sense of where I need to go. So then I'll just hold down Command, and I'll search in Google for like cryonics, and then I'll hold Command and just click, and then a new window, and I'll search why cryonics can work. Click.
Are you pulling salient points out along the way?
No. I'm just clicking the links. Yeah. I'm opening them in tabs right now, just opening them. And why cryonics will never work. Let's get all the skeptics and hear what they're saying. How cryonics works. Click, whatever. But I may have learned something in the article, also in the Wikipedia article, about the fact that it's vitrification. It's not freezing. Those are two different things. Vitrification, freezing is when water turns to ice, right? So it expands and it becomes rigid. And if that happens in your body, all your cells explode. You can't freeze a human. Vitrification is what we do for organs, for example, organ transplants, when we have to put something on ice, but you can't actually freeze it or it'll destroy the organ. You use antifreeze to pump antifreeze through it, and then you use something like liquid nitrogen to bring it to like negative 195 degrees. I forget if it's Celsius or Fahrenheit. And some crazy cold temperature. And what you're doing is it's almost like a glass. Glass isn't actually like a solid. It's a liquid. It's a very viscous liquid. It's the same thing here, where you're basically turning this into the crystalline structure doesn't happen. It's just all the atoms, all the molecules just stop moving right where they are, because they can't, because there's not enough heat. So you're just pausing it exactly as it is. So it can't, because if you leave an organ out with neither of those things, it will just deteriorate, right? The world will just, all the bacteria will eat it away, whatever, decompose. So this is the solution. So I'll go read about vitrification. What's the science of it? How does it work? Where is it used in other things? I heard about cryonics. I always thought it was cryogenics. What's the difference? Cryogenics, and let me just read about I'll Google cryonics versus cryogenics and read there. Anyway, so now I have all those open, and I'll just start going. And I don't read every article. Sometimes I'll just look and that looks like trash or whatever, or I'll get the picture, but I will just absorb. And it can be kind of icky at first, and then it becomes really fun when you start to get it, because now, then what I like to do, and this is like, it's hard to know if this is actually an efficient thing to do, but I think it does help the article, is now that I get it, and I feel like I really have a good sense, I'll go fill the holes, now I'll go on YouTube or somewhere, and I'll watch videos explaining what I already know, which I think is a really fun thing to do when you really understand something, to watch a really good explainer explain it, because they're gonna either you already know it and that's just satisfying, but also you can kind of in your head predict what's coming next. And if I can't predict if there's stuff in that video that I'm like, didn't understand that at all, good, that tells me. So I'll test myself, but it's also just kind of a fun process. It's fun once you have a tree trunk of knowledge to just add leaves to it, little leaves, and just to keep kind of like soaking in how much you know. It's like really fun. So I'll do that, and then
do you have a note document?
Yeah.
Okay. So
okay.
you're keeping it pretty comprehensive.
Oh yeah. And the note doc there's both usually a couple docs open. There's like a note doc and then there's like an outline doc. So there's like also what's the game we're gonna play here. With Cryonics, I was like, if you're gonna do it, here's how you have to do it. Step 1, 2, 3, 4. Step 5 was die. Step 6 was now you do this, whatever. But that's not obvious. That's the obvious thing would just be like, here's this technology, here's how it works, here's the pros and cons. And I'm like, let's have more fun than that, right? Let's make it more of a addictive kind of read, and more fun to write too. So I want to always come up with like, what's a good game here? What's like the structure? Sometimes it is just chronological, but usually there's something you can come up with that's better. So I'm also like thinking of, I'm pasting quotes and stats and notes along with the links. I'll need to source it or go back to it. I've made that mistake before. Being like, where the fuck did this stat come from? I can't find it. And then
that's my problem, by the way. Sometimes I'll put things in quotes,
you don't remember
and I'll be like, did he say that, or did I take that from someone else that was quoted in it?
You got to be really careful, by the way, with a good quote, a good colloquial quote, because I write colloquially. If I just paste it in, I'll think that's me writing my idea.
Totally. And now you're plagiarizing
it. So I have to be very careful and write like someone colon blah blah blah. It's like I'm always terrified of accidental plagiarism. And so yeah, then it's just like collecting all the info, and while you're collecting the info, that's a useful exercise where you're also thinking, what are the buckets here of areas? There's like how it works, blah, blah, blah. And then there starts to be what's the game. And then once you have the game, okay, now I'm going to go through the steps, and I want to talk about this in the intro and this in the conclusion. Then I will go and take the stuff I really need from the note stock and make basically a second version of that outline and put the long one that has all the things I need in it. Now I'm ready to write, and then I'll go and write it out. And honestly, at this point, the hard part is done. Like that's the icky. The reading is fun. The outlining is shitty. It's just like I feel like I'm doing like high school homework. It's not fun. Writing, if you happen to be in one of those like glorious flows, which does happen, anyone who does any kind of creative work or probably any kind of work at all knows the feeling of like it's just you're on fire and you have all this adrenaline and you have dopamine and it's just going, and you have to go to the bathroom for an hour and you don't even get up because you're just no one can. And that's a good metric, by the way, because when I'm procrastinating, I'll be like, do I have to go to the bathroom? I think maybe just a little. I'll just go. Just anything. Do I need to get something from the fridge? Just anything to get up. So it's the opposite. You're like, it's like a magnet to your work. So unless I'm in that zone, which is hard to come by. And of course, it's dumb brain. When I'm in that zone, I take it for granted. I think, good, this topic is good for me. I'm on a roll this week. No, you're on a roll right now. Don't fuck it up. Like, go, get as much as you can, right? I'll just be like, oh, this is who I am now. It's like when you hit a good golf shot.
Sure.
And you're like, oh, I got this. And you're just like, it's amazing how much I can just like hit 2 good drives in a row. And I'm like, I finally cracked it. I'm like, good at this now. No, you're not. You're in a good zone for 2 holes. And then drawing is also miserable. So basically the whole thing sucks. But then once the drawings are done and I finish and I read it and I'm revising it, now I'm like so satisfied. I'm like, I did it. Wrangled this topic into this thing, and then publishing it is great. Publishing is great because you're actually connecting it to this is what it's all for, is all the brains that you've collected that think like you. You have all this fondness for them. You get to, guess what I have to show you now? Boom. And people are all reading it and absorbing it, and they're having the same epiphanies that you had. And it's great.
What's the most fun part of all, besides the publishing side? What part of that do you enjoy the most?
I mean, if you're in a writing flow, that's great.
Yeah.
That's euphoric. It's like, or if someone just you write a really funny joke or a really good line, and you're just like, yes, that was great. Same with drawing. It's like up and down, like a new blank canvas. Hell, just sitting there, just being like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
I'm just bad. It's also, I'm like, how do I draw a horse? I don't know. But then once the drawing is like coming along and I'm like doing the details or a diagrams are kind of fun because there's nothing with the pen. I'm like, if I'm making like a chart, those are kind of fun. I like those. And then research, learning is exhilarating. If it's a topic like cryonics or AI, where I go from, I feel like at 1 through 10 knowledge, I'm like at a 2 to start off. And I get myself up to like a 6, getting, it's orders of magnitude difficult. So at that point, it's like logarithmic. If you want to get from a 6 to an 8, you're going to have to probably spend a year. You want to get from an 8 to a 10, you have to spend a career, right?
Sure.
You get a PhD and all that. So I like to get to like right before it starts to get hard, like get to a 6 where I'm like, I can, the way I would define that is I can explain the shit out of it to like a table of smart friends who don't know about it. Or I can do a talk on it to a group of laymen. And be accurate. I'm saying things that an expert would say, yeah, he's right about those things. and I can also crush the Q&A. So it's not just like, I better not go out of what I know. It's like, no, you can ask me anything about this and I'll I know what I know and I know what I don't know, but I have a pretty good sense. That's a 6. It's like, you know a lot. You know enough to write a really good explainer on the internet. I'm not going to go write a paper on it. I'm not going to go and sit on a panel with experts. And I'm not going to do a talk to experts. Unless sometimes I do a talk to experts just because my angle there is I'm not going to teach you something you don't know about the topic, but I'm going to introduce you to my framing. Maybe it's helpful to you.
The simplification.
Yeah, maybe this will help you explain to others, or maybe it'll inspire. Sometimes it can, maybe it'll remind you how important your work is or whatever.
So I want to talk about your book. It was a big task. We've talked about how long it was, and it's called. The name of the book is "What's Our Problem: A Self-Help Book for Society." It took you 6.5 years to write it. Why did you do it? I know it started as a blog post.
Let me tell you, if this were 6 years ago and someone said, here's an option. You can spend the next 6 years writing a book, right there I'd say no.
Yeah.
I'm not going to spend 6 years doing any project. Life is too short. And then they say a book about society and politics and human nature, I would say definitely no. That's not even like my topic.
It's like, Tim Urban, your NPS is in the high 90s, and let's pick something that's going to piss off people inevitably.
And it's not what I'm most interested in.
Yeah.
I think it's really important. That's why I was going to dive in, even though I didn't want to write about politics at all, because I felt like this page 1000 thing we talked about, none of these, it felt a little bit, there was this cloud hanging over all of those futuristic topics I wrote about. Genetic engineering, life extension, cryonics, AI, because I was like, we're going to fuck all of this up right now. If our society is a house we live in, and that house is the only way we're going to get to a good future is if that house is sturdy and that I see the foundation is crumbling, I'm not going to be like in the house being like, let's talk about the future. I'm like, the foundation is crumbling, like, or potentially crumbling. So it did feel like the root topic. It felt like the topic beneath all the other topics. And it's like, so I that's why I took it on, and I don't regret taking on the topic. It's just that a book, if I'm going to spend even 3 years on a book, it's like, it should be one of my favorite, most Tim topics. And this was not that. And it just became that. So it is what it is. Like, I'm happy with the result. I'm happy. I think it can make a good impact, at least. At least it was, but that was the impetus to get into it. Was like, I was looking around and I was like, we are declining in wisdom right now. Like, collectively, we're like mobs and shamings and like demagogues are on the rise. Like, what? This is stuff that like you're supposed to think other countries do, or people in the past did, like the Red Scare, and like I'm like, we're doing this stuff now, right? As like technology is accelerating at an unprecedented rate, and we need to be like grown-ups right now if we're not going to fuck this up and end up in the dystopia. And so that was like the genesis of the.
And so the root of the issue, or that you talk about, and there's a bunch of different things that we can go into, but basically, the book frames that we're addicted, in your words, to the real politicians of Washington, D.C., and it talks about we have a left and right axis, but actually you introduce the concept of having a high and low rung on those axes, which I want to talk about. But one of the things I heard you say is maybe 3/4 of your readers at one point in time voted for Hillary. Is that
right?
I
did a survey in 2016 during the general election. I said, who you're voting for, and it was 3/4 Hillary, 1/8 Trump, and 1/8 another Republican, which tells me that I would guess a little more than 1/4 are Republicans then, because I'm sure some Republicans are saying the other Republican's not going to win, and I'd rather have Hillary than Trump, but I'd still vote for most Republicans in most elections. So maybe I have their 30% Republican readers, and also, I think the lots have changed. I wouldn't be surprised if I should do it again. I think I wouldn't be surprised if it's different today, more even, more 50-50 or closer to it. But that was what it was then.
What's the feedback been like from the book? I mean, you've written about like the need to to have approval and the need to feel gratification from people. I assume just inevitably, I have to imagine not everyone loved the book, right? So what has that been like?
Yeah, like I write about procrastination. I do a TED Talk on procrastination.
50 million viewers on procrastination. Everyone loves it.
Everyone, either they have the problem and they relate, or they don't and they're like laughing at you and they're being self-deprecating.
Or you made some good jokes on there.
Exactly.
People are like, great, yeah.
There's a lot of topics, and even AI, which is a little controversial. No one's like hates me for what I said about it. So yeah, no, it's like you said. It's like I have a friend that was like, you don't have any haters. Why are you doing this? And I was just like, A, it feels important. B, sunk costs, man. I'm a perfectionist. I'm already in it. I'm not stopping now. So the result, I will say, if I had published this in 2020, 2021, I think it would have been way bigger negative reaction than it was in 2023. I think that was a big couple of years in a lot of, and a lot of people who were pretty tribal, like chilling out a little bit. And B, I think just a little bit like, I'm not cancelable because I have my own plan, but cancel culture vibe, that vibe of we should try to ruin the reputation of a person who says something. It's still very present, and it comes in waves. It might go back up, but at least when I published, it felt like it was a little bit less fashionable because it's all about fashion. Most of the people doing this, they're not very grown up. They're not acting grown up. And when we're not being grown up, what do we care most about? Is like approval, tribalism, right? We want to be in the in-group. We want to show off, peacock, for a virtue signal, and we want everyone to like us and want to be popular, right? It's a middle school vibe that does cancel culture, and that same vibe cares so much about what is cool and what's not. So I think a huge amount of the people who participate in that are really just doing whatever's popular. Whatever's going to get them the most popularity points. And they probably did that when they were in middle school too, or maybe they were unpopular in middle school and they feel like they can be suddenly in the in-group and it feels so good. I don't know what the psychology is. But as soon as that goes out of fashion, 90%, I don't know the percent, huge hordes of people start acting kindly again because they're not kind or mean. They're social climbers. They want to be popular, right? They want to, and so they will when it starts to be like, hey, it's just his opinion, don't blah, blah, blah. When that becomes the thing that all the cool kids are saying, they're going to say that too. And when it's saying this person is dangerous and now we know that they're a terrible person, let's find their old tweets and show everyone this is what as righteous people we need to do to protect marginalized people, whatever it is, they'll say that. And so so I'm paying a lot of attention to that, trying to keep my finger on the pulse of that because I had to for the book. I had to follow a ton of divisive Twitter accounts, which is just enraging. Also, across the spectrum, I had to listen to a bunch of podcasts because I was like, I need to really have a sense of what's going on if I'm writing this book. Now I can go back to being a little bit more out of it. But I think that cancel culture is just even the term was very helpful in making it a thing and making people see that it's a form of bullying, maybe. At least some people see a lot of it. There's a whole other group that says there's no such thing as cancel culture. But I feel like it's a little less fashionable, and I think that the book's reaction benefited from that, in that there was plenty of negativity and plenty of people who, I got plenty of, this is so disappointing from Tim. I used to connect with him so much, and he just, Tim's, he's really gone off the whatever. There's some of that, but just not that much. I thought there was going to be more, and I thought that there was a couple articles, one in New Republic, I think, just kind of tearing it apart. But I thought there would be more, and I also thought that the things they would be saying would be much more like ad hominem, like cutting, like this guy is not a good guy, like this is. Like this guy's either a hack or he's a bad dude that we shouldn't like his colors, all of his other stuff. Not much of that. Most of it is saying that I took on the wrong. I spent way too much time on this problem when there's real problems going on. When I for reasons I said, I totally think that's the opposite. But so anyway, I was heartened by the response. I was also heartened by the other thing I thought in 2021. I think a lot of people secretly agreed with me and would have liked the book. But it would have a harder time spreading because it would be something that would be a little scary to share. Because you see, the way that these, in a scary mob environment, which America and all societies can go into, so when there's a little cancel culture in the air, then someone who writes something can get punished, but if you share it, no one cares. When there's a more cancel culture in the air, it starts to cancel the In the book, I depict it like paint, like a smear. The smear travels to the association. So it travels to people who hire them. It travels to people who have them on their podcast. If this were 2021, you might be getting some flack for having me. There's not going to be, I mean, we'll see, but I don't think there's going to be any of that here. It travels to people who share their stuff, who compliment their stuff, who defend them from cancellation. Maybe they might say, I disagree, but this person, we shouldn't be trying to get them fired. It travels to that person. And so, and if it's really bad, it'll go multiple degrees away. I saw, I saw something somewhere said something like, they were criticizing someone for being in a movie with, this is right in the Me Too hot zone. They were criticizing someone for being in a movie with Justin Timberlake because Justin Timberlake doesn't care about women because, as evidenced by he was in a movie with Woody Allen, a different movie with Woody Allen. So Justin Timberlake now is smeared, and anyone who's in a movie now, granted, I don't know if that like actually hurt him or whatever, but anyone. So the podcast is another example where it's like, if I am a demon, right, because of this book, if to a certain crowd, now I go on and now they will not forget. This is like Sam Harris having Charles Murray on.
Yeah.
Now, a left-wing person who really wants to be popular amongst the left might not go on Sam Harris. I mean, they probably wouldn't go on Sam Harris anyway, but for a lot of reasons, because he's very tarnished in that crowd. But they might not go on him specifically because they can't go on someone that he also had this person. So you see what I'm saying? It's a smear web.
Yeah.
And that's, by the way, not a mistake. This is psychology. This is, mob psychology. It's if you can not just punish this person, but punish all the people who might defend them, you hinder anyone who's criticizing the mob, and you isolate them, and you make it so undesirable for anyone else to end up in this situation. It's like a mafia. It's like the mafia. There's all these power. It goes back to real. This is again this organ in our head. One of the things it is natural at is power dynamics between people, social dynamics, right? Because in tribe you had to negotiate a lot of that. If you were on the unpopular crowd in a tribe, you might die. Right? You might starve. You might get killed. You might get kicked out. You might never mate again. And you can imagine how someone who defends the unpopular person, maybe they're now also on the out group with the chief. So you have to suck up to the chief. Look at middle school. This is just tribal dynamics just going. And then we grow out of that, some of us, and some of us don't, but we all have it in us still. And then a certain environment takes over and it's in the air suddenly. And all these grown-ups, you see who it's just, it actually reveals a lot of true colors. You see who really has overcome that and they're genuinely kind out of principle. And you see who is just being kind because that's what it was acceptable for grown-ups. It was unacceptable for grown-ups to act like that. Now it's acceptable. Same with bigotry. A certain kind of bigotry, it becomes okay to say, to just group all white men together as a negative stereotype. Boom, all the true color. Anyone who has a principle against bigotry doesn't jump in on that. Someone who jumps in on that, but they were really anti all other kinds of, you're not anti-bigotry, you're anti-unpopular bigotry. That's a huge difference. Yeah. So I think a time like this reveals, I'm sure Nazi Germany, if you could have gone back then, revealed so many true colors. So yeah.
Wait, so on the distinction for people that haven't read it, so there's left, right, there's high rung, low rung, and the distinction on high rung and low rung is low is going to be much more just beholden to the tribalism that exists within that group and sort of not willing to engage in the discourse across, versus high rung willing to hold views, but also engage and understand and have conversations, or at least shift views coming at it from an intellectually pure standpoint around that kind of stuff. Now, one question, I guess, on this tribalism, or how we ended up here. In your book, you talk about social media, you talk about cable news, you talk about whatever, all the different things. Where do you think this tribalism has come from and come to be such a identity politics, right, as it's defined? Is it all this social media? Is it a lack of I don't know, what used to take the place of organized religion, and now people are defining themselves in a different way around politics and these types of things. What is the root cause of the lack of discourse that we're able to sort of have as a society?
Yeah, so there's many causes. This is like, you could write whole books just on the different hypotheses of what has made this more tribal. But so without like identifying these as the causes, here's what I see as some of the major ones. You've got, first of all, it's like before we get to like even like media or any of these environmental changes, the structure of U.S. tribalism is a thing that I don't think we often think about. So tribalism happens on different levels. 1950s. It's known as a time that was very untribal, right? But actually, it was just as much tribalism. It was just divided. So you had on the high level, you have patriotism versus other countries. That's the Soviet Union, and before that, World War II. So there was a lot of like, there had been a lot of reason for Americans to feel like a single tribe on that level. And probably a lot of bigotry and nasty, ugly tribalism stuff towards other countries in those times. It's still ugly. It's still tribalism. And then there's Republican versus Democrat, which was still a thing. Every state race, when some people are proud Democrats and lifelong Republicans, and the presidential election. So there's still plenty of national tribalism. And then there is inter-party tribalism. And in the 50s, you had a ton of it because there were lots of conservatives and progressives in both parties, which is a weird concept to us today, but that's how it was. There was actually people who were concerned that that it was actually a problem because it actually removed the power of the voter. Because if the voter wants to vote for conservative things, they can't really. A conservative voter doesn't have much power because whoever they vote in is going to have a lot of conservatives and progressives in power, and it's going to mostly be amongst the party to negotiate what really happens, not the voter. So they were saying there was this kind of recommendation from a think tank that was saying, we think this party should be more clear and divided. Again, it's kind of be careful what you wish for and how things turned out, but you can see the reasoning. And so if you go back to the 60s and the 50s, I mean, the people inside the parties, the factions hated each other maybe more than they even hated the other party. They sometimes would, collaborate with the other party against people in their own party. So what you have is three levels of political tribalism. There's also, of course, religious and all kinds of other tribalism you can have. And I think, in a way, what you want is distributed tribalism, distributed amongst different arenas and also within politics, kind of vertically distributed. Because the hatred of the foreign country unites, simmers the tribalism against each other. And likewise, the hatred of people within their party simmers the national divide. So the national divide couldn't have that much gravity. It was just... It just only took up a little bit of space. And then a couple things happened. The national one melts away as the Soviet, World War II moves further into memory, and including people who ever experienced that level of patriotism that World War II must have engendered are just older and dying. And so more and more of the population has no memory of World War II. And the Soviet Union becomes less of a threat until eventually it's a non-threat in the 90s. And so you lose that upper tier, that kind of thing that glues us here, gone. It's a little harder to be maybe proud patriots altogether, right? And so then you also have the realignment of the parties. And this was no one's fault. It was something that, if anything, it's kind of like when it's mixed, it's a little bit unstable. And it just takes like something to nudge it, and then the whole thing starts a feedback loop. So this was maybe the Civil Rights Act. More Republicans than Democrats, percentage-wise, voted in favor of the Civil Rights Act. People often forget that. It was still close. Both parties were torn because you had northern young Democrats that were very progressive, but the southern Democrats were the least progressive people in the country. And then Republicans were the party of Lincoln. They were for civil rights and stuff, but they also were kind of a white country club party that was icked out by multiculturalism. So you had a little bit of both. But Goldwater was the candidate, and it's a whole other story, but it kind of, kind of a freak rise that then went back down. He kind of was an underdog, and he voted against the Civil Rights Act. And so now you have all these black Americans and progressive Republicans, black Republicans, leaving and going to and now it makes less sense for the next candidate to pander to those people and to try to, and it makes maybe more sense. So a bunch of Southern Democrats move to now it makes maybe we don't know, let's capture those Southern states. We can actually get those for the first time in a century. And very quickly the messaging now, it feeds now politicians that are still in this party feel ostracized and that their voters are gone. And you can see it very quickly, not quickly, it took a few decades, but it just polarizes. So now you've got no upper level and no lower level. You have the red team and the blue team. But even in the 90s, it was still, for Congress, they were still running based on their hometown needs mostly. And like whether they were a Republican or a Democrat didn't really map onto the national thing so much. And there's this evidence, clear evidence, in that they have there's this interesting metric, which is basically partisan loyalty. It's in the I think it's as recently as the 90s, people were like, half the people voted for at least both parties in one election. So one for Democrat, one for Congress, another for president, whatever. And that has completely disappeared. Likewise, in Congress, the overlap ideologically was kind of like a sizable overlap, and that is just gone. Like there's the most conservative Democrat is still more progressive voting wise ideologically than the most progressive Republican. So you have this extreme, it's like anything, it's like feedback loops, these things. They happen, and once they happen, they become hard to reverse because it becomes so then you have these mega cultures start to form around it. The kind of people like us that vote for that party are the kind of Americans that, and you see that, and Reagan didn't talk like that at all. He was the opposite. Reagan talked like, if you love America, you love your fellow Americans, and we're all Americans, and and Obama more recently actually talked like that. That we're not red states and blue states, we're the United States of America, right? That was the theme a lot. But early 90s, you start having a lot of Republicans. Gingrich is famous, of course, for this, and then Pat Buchanan's 1992 speech, and he's saying the convention, there's the real America, and then there's that America that is for gay people and for women in the military and for the declining values, and then there's real Americans. And that sounds very familiar today, but then it was horrifying. People got a really negative backlash, but that sentiment started to kick in, and then again, it takes on a life of its own. It becomes much bigger than politics. It becomes like, obviously, I am a good person, and my friends are, well, obviously we're on this side, we're not, and then it becomes this whole crazy thing where it might as well be Hitler's Germany. It's like the total, bigotry is just the kind of rank stereotyping of a giant group of people who you probably don't know any of them, and negative stereotyping, and then and so when it's, of course, race is so sensitive in the U.S. So bigotry against black people from a white person is completely out of fashion. I think in almost all circles. I'm sure there are some circles there, but it is really out of fashion where it's and it sounds to us like bigotry, like an awful person would say that. Political bigotry doesn't have any stigma at all. You can say, of course, the right wingers with their blah blah blah, right? And with no stigma, again, true colors, you see kind of who is totally into bigotry. They just are also into being fashionable. And who is, they don't talk like that. This is what I'm talking about, the high rung, low rung. On the high rungs, no one talks about half of America as the problem. And it's just, it's not true, first of all. It's not accurate. It's not nuanced at all. It's complicated. Every individual is complicated. Society is insanely complicated. So it's just kind of like, it's like a dumb part of your brain is in a mode where I call it political Disney world. You're in a mode where it's like a Disney movie. There's protagonists, and then there's Aladdin and Jafar, and it's like obviously the bad guys, obviously the good guys, and obviously we're right about everything and smart, and they're dumb and wrong about everything, and every problem is their fault. We are the completely correct, completely smart, completely righteous good people, and they are the bad, dumb, evil people, and every problem in our country is their fault, right? That is not real. That's no thinking adult could ever think that's how it is, but we stop being thinking adults when we get into this mode. So now you compound this with the changes in the media, right? So you had, again, you had these television stations, ABC, NBC, CBS, that had to broadcast to the whole country, if one of them started being blatantly right-wing or left-wing, they would lose all the viewers. They would become the joke, the laughing stock. If they started being less accurate than the others, they would become a laughing stock. So there was this pressure, this incentive to keep them near kind of the media North Star where they were being reasonably neutral and accurate. And then cable TV, talk radio, that fairness doctrine goes away, which is a law that we used to prevent one-sidedness. And so suddenly you have Rush Limbaugh, you have Fox News, you have MSNBC, you have these stations and these voices who are very much out in the table. Instead of telling people, instead of having their political leanings be very secret, which is what it used to be, they're very clearly on one side. And instead of telling you who's going to win the election, who might win the election, they're saying who ought to win the election. And it's very clear, we all agree that there's the good candidate. That is not news. That's weird, right? If people in the 60s, I think, or 70s, or even 80s, if they saw it today, they'd be like, what is this? This isn't news. This is appalling. This is like so unprofessional and like ridiculous. It's like trash. But that's what we have. And that's where almost everyone gets their news, is from something that is basically political junk food. It's catering to kind of our primitive minds, our tribal minds, and it is doing so by firing up the tribe about how good and right and we are, confirming that political Disney World worldview over accuracy, neutrality, all out the window. Then you have social media on top of that. The internet starts, social media starts. I think social media can actually can be good in some ways too. It becomes hard to really, for a mob to truly silence anything when there's social media, but it has been very good for echo chambers, and even more so for scaring people. It's a digital mob is a new concept. No, there were never digital mobs in the human history before very recently, a decade basically. So the digital mob springs on the scene, scares the shit out of everyone, and everyone starts saying what the digital mob wants to hear. And so all of it is, and then there's all these other structural factors that are super boring that I won't get into. Campaign finance, elections are way more expensive now. Gerrymandering, the red and blue districts. There's so many more. It used to be a lot more purple districts, and purple districts incentivize voters to vote for the most reasonable person on their side, the person that can win over the other side. They have to win the general election. When it's a red district, it's who can be the reddest red, who hates the blue the most, and likewise. And this is both parties' fault. Republicans have done more of it, but it's a lot of times an agreement where they'll say, if we turn these two purple districts into one red, one blue, neither of us have to spend money on either. They don't have to spend money on them, the national parties. So that's been bad. There's a big list of those, and it seems like a lot of different factors are all feeding into this story, this problem. And it's led us to a place that I kind of dub hypercharged tribalism. It's like you have distributed tribalism, which I think is the best, and then you have kind of concentrated, but then concentrated, if the factors are right, can turn into hypercharged. Hypercharged is when it subsumes everything. It's not just, no one's arguing about tax policy. Some people are. That's not tariffs. That's not what we're sitting there hating each other about. It's that there's the good kind of American and the bad, evil kind of American. That's something we all have in us, and it happens to be politics that has exploded that into, it could have been religion in another time. It could have been, East versus West or North, South. And in this case, it happens to be politics, but politics isn't really what's going on. It's that we're having a wave of a flare-up of very, very common human problem.
So social justice fundamentalism is basically the term that you use. I think this is a very loaded term, the wokeism of stuff. But the book itself has 3 chapters-ish dedicated to SJF.
It's a big part of the book.
Big part of the book. And 1 chapter dedicated to the rise of Barry Goldwater and Ronald Reagan and Fox News and all that. The proportionality of those 2 things, why did you do it that way?
I wouldn't have designed it that way. It doesn't really make sense. It was that I initially was just going to take on the social justice side. I was going to build this framework, talk about the history, and then use this one thing that's happening, not as this is the problem. This is a symptom of the problem, and we look at it up close, and I think it's a huge problem. I think it's damaging. By the way, I think it's the biggest problem for social justice causes. I think the progressives should be the most upset about what's happened here, but I think it's a great friend of Trump. I think, the far right loves wokeism, but anyway, so I was going to take that on. I didn't expect to make it as thorough, but it was just, I was like, if you're going to do this, you got to do it right. And it's also, I did think it was interesting once you really start digging into the history and this, that what is a really far left ideology? What even is it? What does that mean? And how did it develop? And how did an ideology that such a small number of people actually subscribe to and understand have such crazy influence over the country that is supposed to be kind of democratic, based on what the will of the people. So, and then just there's so much psychology and victimhood culture and cancel culture and all of this. So anyway, there was a lot to say there, and that turned long. And then I kind of thought that even though I can say 100 times in the book, this is not, but I'm not saying that our problem is this movement. That's blinders on. I'm saying our problem is this giant trend that emerges from human nature sometimes that's happening now at the worst possible time. And there are lots of symptoms of it all around the world. But in the US, multiple, and this is one that I'm going to focus on. It's still going to get read as this is Tim's anti-woke book about he thinks the problem is social justice, wokeness, whatever. So I said to me it was also it was painful to not. I had a few paragraphs in basically showing all the parallels on the right, but I was seeing so many parallels on the right. I was seeing the MAGA movement's another perfect example of a symptom of a demagogue, a classic demagogue who lies, who will do anything to get in power, has no actual principles, and who will undermine the core pillars of the country for gain, right? Classic demagogue. That person is always here. There's always 100,000 of those guys who want to run right every year. One of them won. What's going on? That's part of this story to me. Why is this bully mob movement and this demagogue both rising up at the same time and helping each other? So I said, it's worth a chapter. But by the time it was all done, I just had spent so many more years on the other problem. And so, yeah, so some people will still read it as that's bias or whatever. I wasn't trying to even make an equivalency or not. It's not that I'm saying they're the same. It's that I'm saying that they are both wrecking balls outside the house we live in, and that I'm anti-wrecking ball and I'm pro-house. And so that makes me both sidesism, sure. But like, I'm not saying that inside the house, the left and the right are equal. I'm saying that I haven't even expressed my opinions on left and right, but the wrecking balls of all kinds outside the house are a problem.
Yeah. I mean, the cancellation stuff is, especially within academia, it's pretty crazy. I didn't realize, just going through the list of people that have been revoked as speakers, like Justice John Roberts being revoked from Butler, Condoleezza Rice from Rutgers, Christine Lagarde from Smith College. It's super. The examples you give of
it's almost like with someone like Christine Lagarde. I mean, she's like the first female head of the
IMF, right?
Yeah, the IMF, right? And she massively, was that Wellesley?
Yeah, Smith,
Women's College, should be massively inspiring to so many people. And it's almost like, it's like you ask anyone alone in a room, if you've got all the faculty and all the students alone, you say, do you think it makes sense to actually kick her out from the cancel spotters? Like, 90%, I believe, even at Smith, a really progressive place, would be like, well, no, I'm not going to like revoke the thing, but like maybe it wasn't the right choice. And yet, publicly now, someone says, she shouldn't come. And it's like, dare me. I dare any of you to say otherwise. And suddenly there's this, everyone starts saying, yeah, it's a bully in middle school, saying that kid's a loser. Suddenly it's all these sidekicks start coming on and they say, yeah, in the petition. And who wants to be the professor to say, this isn't what a college should be. This is insane. And they're all thinking it and they're all having that private conversation. And so and there's hundreds of these. Fire the website,
100 examples of it, and
hundreds of examples, and it's going like this, and and by the way, this invitations is just the tip, because there's the shutdown, which is speaker comes and they either won't let people in, they'll forcefully, or they'll block the entrance, or they'll scream in the thing until people give up on the talk. Or the much bigger part of the iceberg is all the people who are saying, we want to invite this speaker, but it's just not worth it. Let's just get someone else. So it's the same thing with all the books that are canceled. How about all the books that sit on the publisher's desk that never get published? How about all the books that never get written? Those are the much bigger part of the iceberg than the famous cancellation stories.
There's so many fascinating examples of social justice fundamentalism and the wokeism. The academic thing, I just want to read this off. Everyone should read your book. But the proportionality of people donating or supporters of different political ideologies within universities, I just found to be crazy. So I'm just going to rattle it off for the sake of people hearing it. But it used to be, I think you quoted 2-1 to 4-1 between Democrat to Republican within academia. STEM fields now are 4.5 within chemistry, to 5.5 within mathematics, between Democrats and Republicans. Psychology 12-1, philosophy 11-1, English 27-1, sociology 27-1, anthropology 42-1, interdisciplinary studies, not a single example.
And those are all the social justice fields.
All the
critical
social
race
justice fields.
theory,
Not a
gender
single
studies.
Republican that
Maybe in the whole country.
in the whole country, which is, it's crazy. I mean, that's and the fact, I guess the interesting thing for me is it used to be like, and you talk about this in the book, but academia was the bastion of free speech and different thought and just, at least hearing the other side of the ideas in the 60s and 70s. Like, it used to be that the left was the ones bringing in the progressive thought, and that was where the controversy was coming from, be it whether Vietnam or civil rights or whatever it is. And now it's actually the opposite of all this, that we're not actually letting these people on campus or to speak at all, which it's an interesting...
Well, and there's really two reasons, I would say. The first is like, who really wants to suppress free speech? The powerful. If you're in power, you like the status quo. Free speech is not the friend of the status quo. You want everyone to have to shut up and do what the powerful say. In the 50s and 60s, when all these free speech, Berkeley and stuff, and free speech was the main thing, and those 60s protests was one of the main things, the left was not powerful. The right had the money, had the power. Look, today, the top, I don't forget some crazy number, of the top 50 earning congressional districts, something like 48 or 47 are blue. Right? And culturally, who can get you fired? Not the right. When the right hates me, which they do plenty of the time too, I don't even care. They had no power, no effect to do anything. The left, if they hate me enough, can kind of really hurt my career. So it's a little bit of that, where it's that now the left is powerful culturally and financially, maybe not politically all the time, but culturally and financially. And so, yeah, free speech is no longer so fun. But also, it's the fact that in a somewhat purple environment, diverse environments like diversity. They're friendly to diversity. So when you have even 4-1, even if it's 75% or 80% Democrats on campus, that's a sizable minority, a vocal enough minority where people appreciate the minority. They appreciate the differences. And there's studies on this, many studies. As long as when that 20% starts going down to 10, 5, even just at 5%, now the environment has gone from a little bit, purplish blue to blue, and a blue or red environment is going to be much more hostile to the other side and hostile to the concept of opinion diversity and viewpoint diversity in general. And so, as these things, it's a feedback loop. As there's a little bit of more hostility towards the right wing on campus, they just some of them filter off to think tanks. A little bit worse, more than filter off. Suddenly, it's getting bluer and bluer, more hostility starts to happen. It becomes scarier for those people to speak up. So that the big point here is that you don't have to go to 0 Republicans to essentially have that effect. When the ratio is 4-1, that one does a huge amount of work in keeping the 4 honest. So when all those progressive papers come out, they're going to have to go through, and progressive ideas and progressive things, they're going to have to go through the filter of the conservative filter, which is really good for truth. And there's going to be debate. And even when I was in college in 2004 at Harvard, a super progressive place, there were lots of debates, lots of vocal conservatives. Today, it is just because it's not that they're not there. They're there in lesser amount, but it got into a critical mass where now it doesn't make sense for anyone to speak up. So it might as well be 0. And now you just have an echo chamber, which is, I got so much intellectual invigoration. I went to college pretty bright blue and left still pretty blue, but I was so invigorated by watching smart conservatives say their thing, and especially debate. I went to so many debates. I just would always go. So Pinker and Larry Summers and Michael Sandel, and I would just go to so many different debates, and I just thought it was so interesting. And I just feel like kids today are legit not getting that. The press would be fired for saying what they said in debates back then. Anyway, it's sad because college has 2 huge things. It educates our future adults, our future society, and teaches them how to think. It teaches them the response to dissent, which is now they're being taught the response is to punish the person. And of course, it produces knowledge. It's where we get our research and knowledge. And so it's a really bad institution to go south.
You concluded the book with awareness and courage as the important things to help find our way out of this, allowing people to really speak their mind, have the bravery to do it. One, know it exists, and two, to have the bravery to do it. And maybe that's the answer. I left yearning for more of a silver bullet, just because it's such a big problem that we have in trying to communicate across the aisle and political spectrums and all that. Now that the book's published and you've had time to digest it, you've gotten feedback on it, are there any specific tactics or things, if someone's listening to this and they realize, like, I've been in my echo chamber either way, I assume more of my listeners are liberal than they are conservative in their politics, but I have no idea. Do you have any advice of like breaking out of this and just trying to be more open-minded to the high rungness? I assume most people think they're high rung. Certainly if they're willing to listen to whatever 2+ hours of us talking about this, they probably are a little bit more high rung. But like, what would you encourage people to help break this mold in this tribalism that we have?
So the reason I say awareness and courage and not more concrete examples, because could be a whole book on concrete examples. Maybe we should have ranked choice voting. Maybe we should change the way primaries work. Maybe
I like all those.
Yeah. And that's just a different, that's for a political scientist to really write about, or for if I spend another 6 years, which I'm not going to do. And so I do think there are some concrete things that can help. But to me, the reason I have these kind of much more kind of abstract solutions is because I actually think if my prescription here was, I think our society is rotten to its core, it's fucked. We need a new kind of society. We need a revolution. That's a tall order, right? And I'm happy to say that that's not what I think we need. I think that the house that we're in, this lowercase l, liberal democracy, is the right house to get us to the future. I'm open to other suggestions, but I haven't heard one yet that sounds better. And when I talk to most people left, right, and center agree with that. Agreeing with the liberal house means being pro-free speech, very, very pro-free speech. It means being, individualism and just, just general kind of equality of opportunity, all the things that, grew up hearing about. Most people want that, and most people do not want political Disney World to sit there and, there's some people that are just really mired in it. Some people say my parent has just totally gotten sucked into it or whatever, or my sister or whatever. But most people I talk to are pretty much just like, yeah, like I'm sick of political tribalism. It's super annoying. And like, I just want like government to function well and like be able to compromise and us to be able to make better decisions. And so therefore, but they're not saying it out loud right now because it's become scary. So that's nice, as opposed to say we need to revolt. I'm like, no. We just need people to resume saying and what they think and defending the house that we're all in against any wrecking balls outside of it, whether it's, I think, I could go into, in the book I spend half the book explaining why I think wokeness, not liberal social justice, which is the opposite of wokeness to me, Martin Luther King style, which is Martin Luther King said the house is great, but it's failing in some areas. We need to make a better house so that it supports, so that all people in it are getting what they are promised. Wokeness says the house is rotten to its core. It's a Marxist ideology. It says it is inherently oppressive, this house. It is the master's house. It'll always be the master's house. Knock it down. So whether that's from the left or from the right, Trump undermining trust in the election to me as wrecking ball outside the house. That is a drill into the foundation. And so a lot of people agree with this, but so the first thing is awareness. Just to, first of all, where am I being tribal? Where am I totally doing confirmation bias and trying to confirm my existing beliefs much more than I'm actually trying to get to the truth and open to changing my mind? We all have these things where it's like, you're too emotional about this topic. It's too tied to your identity. It's too fun to have this viewpoint. It's too convenient to have this viewpoint with all your friends having it too. For whatever reason, you're not open to changing your mind. So be aware of that, because you're not thinking. You're doing a very primitive thing, which is you stopped playing with ideas intellectually and you're now playing with them tribally. And stop doing that, because your brain is too awesome to like make it, you're letting the ideas be your boss. You work for the ideas now, and you'll read all the right things to confirm it. You are those ideas' loyal servant. You're the disciple of that. And fuck that. You're way too impressive and smart to do that with your own brain. Like, you be the boss of your ideas, which means you're down to change them. There's no idea that's too sacred to argue against or change. So first, think about yourself, and then concentric circles. Think about the people around you. Are you in an echo chamber at times? Who's enforcing that? Is it you? Is it someone else? Is it the whole group's kind of culture? Is it the vibe? Is it something where we actually would all rather not be in this if someone could just break out of it? Or would it go really badly? And it's not saying that you should always try to break out of that. If your family is super blue and you know that it's going to hurt your relationship with them to say it, maybe don't give up, maybe over time. But I would say your family is more important than any of this. So like, don't hurt your relationships for this, but maybe seek out some people also that can be like this. Or if you think a group we can be better than this. Let's work on your own group and try to make it more of what I call the opposite of an echo chamber, an idea lab, where it's a safe space to say what you think because no one takes it personally and people like to kick ideas around. And disagreement is cool as opposed to an echo chamber where it's all about we all agree. And then finally, like what are the big things going on? That's what my book is about. Read books like mine and lots of others and try to see what you think about what's the big story going on in society. This is awareness. This is all about you getting clear-headed about what is the right way for things to be going and wrong and what we should be doing. Then courage is the second thing, because there's a lot of people who are aware of all this, but they're keeping it to themselves or to their little conversations. And that just doesn't do anything. The worst thing you can do is actually pander to the people you disagree with because it's popular or because you're scared not to. Because now you're actually, if there's a boat we're in headed towards that fork in the river, and I was talking about utopia and dystopia, you're actually paddling towards dystopia with them. So at least take your oar out of the river and don't just stay silent. Don't say stuff you don't believe out of pressure or out of popularity. Then if you can, start rowing in the other direction and going against the grain maybe, and maybe it's not that socially fun, but like if you're part of the liberal democracy and you care about the house and you care about the future, like it's kind of your part. It's like you recycle. Why do you recycle? Because it's kind of doing your part. Well, I think you should be, trying to speak out against tribalism and against kind of collective stupidity. And then finally, if you can, concentric circles, go. If you're not going to get fired, I don't want people to get fired. Maybe they can be a martyr, great, but most people aren't going to get fired. They're just going to deal with some backlash, and maybe not even that much. I thought I was going to get more than I got. Go public. Start talking about this in classrooms, at your company. And again, talking about this, I'm not saying you should talk about why a political side is right or wrong. I'm saying why political tribalism taking over companies and institutions and shutting down discourse and killing our ability to have productive discussions and to be wise as a collective for the future. That's what I'm talking about. Push back against that. So that's why I wrote this book, to get people in the zone where they could like read it and be like, fuck yeah, like, yes, I'm going to start talking about this. That's what I'm hoping. Hoping I can change some minds and also fire up some people who already agreed with me to start speaking out. That is not a silver bullet. And I'm not sure there is one. Maybe there is. And I just think, first, let's go for the low-hanging fruit. If we could just do that, we'd already be a lot better than we are now. Then I think there should be a lot of people writing, hopefully, great books about specific changes we can make to change the environment and tweak it so that we make good decisions for the future. But yeah, that's not what I tried to do here.
One thing I heard you say at some point, I think it's a Paul Graham quote, about keeping your identity small. Why is that an important quote to you? And what do you think? Like, how does that actually apply to your life?
Yeah, I just think of your identity as kind of like it's at its core, it's just like an awareness, like a human awareness working its way through life. That's like the most basic thing that it is. And then there's a backpack on your back. And every more specific thing you attach to your identity is like a rock in that backpack. And I don't think you should have nothing. I don't think it's okay to be like, yeah, I'm the kind of person who this, or like I'm like a proud American, or like I love this. I'm the kind of person who has a dog. I love dog. It's like you're gonna have some things. And having a personality, you're gonna have some things that are just, it's kind of fun to just have some stuff that's part of who you are. But when you have too much, and especially certain things, they're like big rocks, and that backpack can get very heavy. And and it can be kind of like another analogy could be like it's like bars, and eventually you're like inside of a cage that you've built for yourself. So a classic one I think is a bad thing is to be like, I'm a proud progressive or conservative or Republican or Democrat. All you're doing is saying, I cede my independent mind to that corporation, the Democrat Party of America, or to this ideology or this concept. Why? Why would you box yourself in like that? Maybe, by the way, if you think conservatives are right about most stuff and the conservatism is you just really tap in, great. You can still be mostly have your views tend to fall conservative, but if you say I would never have a progressive policy viewpoint or vote for a Democrat because that's not who I am, all you've done is removed your independence from the equation, and now it's like that. That's, by the way, that's exactly where like those big parties want you, is just blindly in their pocket, just like Apple wants you to be. That I'm the kind of person who has an iPhone, not just I happen to have an iPhone because it seems like the best phone right now. And if, they want you to, I get Apple products, right? That's great for them. And by the way, I think that one is a lot less harmful because, okay, so just say you're a tribal Apple person, which I am. I think that one at least is, so maybe the downside for me is I'll maybe have a little bit less exploration in tech products, which can be fun. An upside is that I don't have to spend that time doing that. A downside is that maybe there's a better Android phone here and there, or maybe there's a better tablet that I'll just never get, and maybe I'm overpaying. That's minor compared to ceding your intellect to a political party or to, So I think once you start saying, or even worse, another bad one is career. I am a lawyer. No, you're not. You're someone who's practicing law right now. If you are a lawyer, then it's going to feel like an identity crisis to change careers. I live in this city. I'm a New York City person through and through. It's like, well, okay, maybe this isn't right for you in 10 years, and you're not going to even consider that now. So with all of those things, if now I'm a proud Democrat lawyer who lives in New York, who loves to travel to beaches but not to mountains and 100 other things, you dug in your heels in these things. You've backed yourself into an unpleasant corner. So the point is that we all have a kind of a tendency, some of us more than others, to do this. And partially it's because it feels like that's what a personality is. And if you don't do that, you're boring. What are you? Just a person? You're nothing. And that's what gives me my person. And it's actually not true, actually. Like, I think a lot of people feel like they're boring if they don't have either like a job they can stick to themselves that sounds cool, or a bunch of really strong opinions, or a bunch of like quirks. And it's like, at least I don't judge my friends that way. I want to be friends with people who are fun to talk to, who are like nice people, who are funny, who laugh a lot, and who like laugh at the same things I laugh at, and who think of them. And I don't know anyone who's like, I want to be friends with with New York lawyers like me. No one's there. So the point is, it's just like, I think that we do this as kind of a shield. And it's like the Paul Graham quote is so good because it's a reminder that just put the backpack down. You can just knock these bars down that you've set up. And it's so liberating. I can just like, I'm just a wandering guy figuring it out. And this is what I like right now. And this is what I believe right now. And that might all be different next year. Freedom. And suddenly all this creativity and openness and exploration can emerge from that.
Do you have any blogs that you've written where your thoughts have really evolved or changed, or that you regret the wait but why posts that sit out there?
Usually there's every post if I go back and reread a post, I'm always like wincing from either like the slang I was using back then, or the fact that I've learned a lot more now. There's a lot of posts where I'm like, oh, I have such a more nuanced thought, or that's just wrong now. But I don't actually mind those. I'm like, that's fine. That was being 2014, and the date's right at the top there. And so I'm like, it's like an old picture of me. It's like whatever. So I don't usually have any problem with those. I'm like, that's okay. And I think I'm proud of most of them. I think most of them hold up really well. There's some like again, I don't go back and read them that often, so I think I probably would have a lot more answers. If I had to go read the whole thing, I'd be like, oh, fuck. There's like all these that I can't believe I said that publicly. The very first post, this is so old now, it's almost not even relevant, but it's called 7 Ways to Be Insufferable on Facebook. And it was fully me saying, I want to get some buzz for this new blog. And I think it's a funny post. I think I make some good points in it. And it was an early take on social media. It was like image crafting. Look at all this image crafting we're doing. But it was just kind of like mean. I don't know. I feel like looking back on it, I'm like, that's not me. And that's like, and I feel like a lot of my readers, they come to it, but why? Because it helps them feel comfortable in their skin. And like, and that is who I am and who I want to be. And so and I look back at that, I'm like, I feel like if my big readers who really like my stuff go back and read the first post, I feel like it's mean just in that I'm like basically making fun of people who are just like, I'm like, why are you posting? Why are you telling all of us that you like had this for lunch? It's so like boring. But like people are doing that because they're lonely and they just share with their friends and like. So I just felt I felt bad about that one like pretty soon after. And so that's one.
You have a TED Talk that has 50 million views on YouTube. I think it's one of the most popular TED Talks of all time. It's about procrastination and how people procrastinate and how you procrastinate. Are there any methods for dealing with procrastination? I had heard you say that you actually have a coworker or someone you work with that actually has access to your screen to watch what you're doing at all times. Like, are there any tactics?
I have so many methods.
Yeah. So what
and they're each for different things. The worst method by far is underwriting the problem and thinking like, I'm just not going to procrastinate tomorrow. I'm just going to get up tomorrow. And unlike today and all the other days, tomorrow, I'm going to just crush it. That's a terrible method because that's your dumb brain being delusional. And that's how you'll do it day after day after day after day. You just continue to think tomorrow will be different. So methods are good. One method is the one that you just mentioned, which is like in the old days when I was in school, I'd have a free period and I'd be hanging out with my friends and then I'd be like, oh, it's 5 of, I have to go to class. And I really didn't want to go to class. I wanted to stay and hang out with my friends. I was having fun. I was like, oh, I have to go to class now. But I went to class because I had to, because there was external pressure to. If I didn't, bad things would happen. I had to go. So I would just get up and go. And it wasn't like torture. I would just be like, okay, I got to go to class. See you later. And I get up and go. And then you kind of forget it. And then you're in class and it's fine. Once you're there, it's actually not so bad, you know? And it's that little moment of like, I don't want to, but I have to. And then you do it. So part of I think a problem for a lot of today's procrastinators, especially ones working at home with a lot of like freedom, is there's no one making them go to class. So it's like that. It's like I should be, it's 9:20 a.m. I said I'm going to start writing at 9:30. And I should have that feeling of like, but I got to do it. So I got to sit down and start doing it. But there is no class starting. That's just a me rule in my head. I can just, and even then I won't say to myself, I'm going to skip the rule. I'll say, no, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to like do it in a second. I'm going to go do some other stuff. And sit down at the computer and I'm like, well, I'm not going to start writing right now. I'm just in a second. I'm just going to, suddenly it's 11. Suddenly it's 1, right? And so I will have my Wapewise manager of lots of things, Alicia. It's like she does a little of everything. And she deals with me. She has to deal with my shortcomings day in and day out. And so she's very used to it. One of the things was like, let's co-work. And during COVID, it became, let's co-work on Zoom. You sit next to me or I'll share my screen. And now I'm in class. Like, it's not that like, you don't need, it's not like there's a mountain you have to climb. There's just a bump you have to get over. You need something to push over the bump. And alone, it's just like, there's not enough momentum. So even just having someone who I respect, who's going to be shaming me if I'm not doing this, it's just push me over the thing. And then and again, it's like class. Once I'm actually writing, I'm often like, I'm having fun. Like, and I get kind of like in a flow and I'm like, this is great. So it's not rational. It's not like I hate writing and I'm tortured when I'm doing it. It's just starting writing. And then you get into momentum. And then the perfectionist in my head that will also go down other spirals will also sometimes get kind of addicted to the writing and get kind of into it. And now suddenly I have a great day then. So that's one. Another one is I have these two friends, they're YouTubers, Philip Detmer and CGP Grey, and we talk every week. And one of us will say, I have to finish this thing for next week. So I have to do this. Either every day I have to do something. I'll send an emoji when it's done, or else I'll send you each $200. Or by the end of the week, I have to show you this is done. And you have to be honest. You can't lie. And so you have to. And so that is very effective. These are all just ways of getting external. Now, this is the immediate duct taping the boat that's leaking solutions. If you really want to fix it, you have to get deeper into psychology and build different habits, which we could talk about forever. But like, that's something I'm also just working on, is like, what is the psychology here? How do I turn it? How do I flip a switch over time that can make me not need these things? And I'm working on it. I have more to say about that in a future post sometime.
AI best friends and AI girlfriends slash boyfriends. It's something that feels pretty dystopian to me, but I'm not actually sure it's wrong. Do you think we're going to live in a world in which some of our best friends are actually AI, or that people are in relationships with chatbots in different ways?
I think we are, and I'm unsure if it's right or wrong, or if it's good or bad. I don't think there's anything morally wrong about it. Whether it's going to have a positive or negative effect. It seems to people today, and me too probably, like first instinct, this is bad, right? People are going to not be socializing with their real friends, and they're going to be like stuck, inside talking to their AI friends and whatever. But I saw a tweet or some quote or something that someone said, extroverts think the internet makes people lonelier. Introverts may think the internet makes people less lonely. And I'm like, I think that's a lot of what's going on, is extroverts will always be horrified at a concept like this. They're like, this isn't real. This isn't real life. This isn't real socialization. You're in the internet. You're on a Reddit thread. Like, get outside, right? Introverts are saying, this is the first time I've found a community. This is the first time I can be myself and have all these friends. So I think that's a big part of it. I think, like, of course, extroverts won't like this. And I think they should have some humility and think about what's it like to not be them. Someone with a lot of friends should be very, slow to comment on this and think, what would it be like? There's a lot of people that have no friends. They go to work, they talk to their colleagues or whatever. They leave. There's no one to call. They wake up in the morning they're single, and they wake up on a Saturday morning and there's just no one to hang out with. That's a lot of people's reality. Or there's a couple friends they'll see once a month for a drink, and they're just deeply lonely. Of course, is like such a human. It's a core need, right? We're social species. So that inclines me to think that it might be a little like social media. There's a Wild West phase where, like, at first there's like all these people that end up getting convinced to commit suicide. Just all really awful things start to happen, and people go off the map in depression. And I think maybe then it matures into a place when the AI friends are very integrated and they're real friends, and it's great. And it's a little like when I look at like a very weird Reddit thread, like a very weird subreddit, and I see all these people like joking and all these private jokes I don't get on it. I'm like, this is clearly a good thing, I think, for those people. Like, maybe they'd be outside more, seeing people more, but like they are socializing right now. They're getting all that. They're getting a lot of what they need there. And I don't think these are real extroverts stuck on Reddit all the time. I think there's the Myers-Briggs thing, that second thing, N versus S. I mean, these are all like INTP or INTJs. I did a survey of my own readers. It's like 80% of the world are S's. This is like, you have to know that. Basically, N is like your head's up in the clouds. You're like thinking a bunch of like other, versus S, you're like in the room with the 80% of the world's S's, and like 80% of my readers are N's. And I think Reddit's probably like that. It's just like, these are a certain profile, and I think that it could be really good for them. As far as like romantic relationships, I think it's interesting. Now, the one thing that is very scary is, look, Japan, you have they're ahead of us on all this stuff. You have sex dolls, and you have like cuddle rooms that you can like pay someone to cuddle with you, and you have a big sex industry, and you have fewer kids because there are at least a sizable portion of men are getting what they need now that they would otherwise seek out a family or wife, and then that would turn into kids. I think you could see a decline in marriages, in real life marriages where kids are, and kids. Maybe, I'm just thinking now, maybe someone and their AI wife have a kid with, or AI husband have a kid with a sperm donor and or whatever, or a surrogate, and then they have a kid and they actually raise it together. The AI people are going to be real people like, and so maybe they legitimately, and someone grows up with a person dad and an AI mom, and it doesn't seem to matter.
Requests for Wait But Why on sex dolls in Japan and AI culture and cuddle rooms.
They're
and
going to
all
be
that.
ahead of, if you want to see wherever any of this industry is going, just look there because they're like 5-10 years ahead.
I want you to do the deep dive so I don't have to.
Yeah.
I think that'll probably lead me into some more weird forums. But so Elon, you're friends with him. I don't want to ask too much about how he operates or all that stuff. But I guess interesting question of what you've done blog posts on what makes him like special and unique as an operator. If you were to distill down what was tens of thousands of words, and I guess that was what, 2015, 16 that you did all those posts on it. So you've had communication with him since then. What trait or traits or characteristics, or like if you could extrapolate all of that stuff and actually say, here's one or two just like very unique things that you wish more people had or more people emulated that he does so well, what would that be?
It's interesting because when I tried to figure out like why is this guy able to do what he does, he has a lot of things. He's extremely smart, right? He's a lot of money to work with. He's ambitious. You know, he has these big goals. But what was interesting was I think it was a reflection on us, on the rest of us more than him. It's almost like what he lacks that a lot of us have. So I talked about our brain is an organ that is made for a certain thing, and it's going to misfire all kinds of ways in today's world. And so we have a weird relationship with risk. You know, starting a company seems scary. It's not dangerous. So scary, you know, it should something where I can't quit my job and start a company. What if I had to? What if? And if you actually play it out, often it's like nothing that bad's going to happen, actually. And this is a dream of yours. It could change your whole life, and you really want to build this thing, and you're not because what? Because you might have to get a smaller apartment, and then what? Oh, and then some people talk about you behind your back, and then you feel frustrated for a little, and then so what, right? And so there's a lot of examples like that of things that are that seem scary to us that aren't actually scary. I think he's like 5 standard deviations above the mean at this particular quality, which is ability to override so many of these weird human irrationality traits that we have. We just have a certain areas where we have really struggled being rational. And it's a superpower if you can actually be rational in those. So another classic example is, who was great at doing this was, I always use an example like Steve Jobs, Apple, right? The human mind there says, you're a computer company, you don't know how to make phones. Okay, right there, don't do it. Secondly, there's all these companies that have been doing this forever. Obviously, your idea of no keyboard, if it were a good idea, they would have done it a long time ago. And the fact that no one's doing it is kind of proof that it's not. And just don't, whatever. And that's why most computer companies stay out of the phone industry, because they stop there. They say, yeah, this is not our thing. And if there was a huge innovation to do, they would have figured it out. We're not going to. Steve Jobs said, people are wrong all the time. He has this great quote. He said, the world around you is built by people no smarter than you. And the fact that all those phones suck might just mean that those companies are not doing a good job. And let's go do it, right? So superpower, and this is why he's Steve Jobs. So Elon, the classic example with, he has example after example, but like starting SpaceX. Lots of billionaires who tried to start a rocket company. They've all failed. This is a terrible idea. You're going to be a laughing stock. You're also going to waste all your money. And imagine if you went from, being so rich after PayPal to having nothing. And secondly, you want to land a rocket. Once SpaceX starts, you want to land a rocket. Like, obviously, NASA and the Soviet Union, with their billions of dollars, would have done that if it was possible. Obviously, you're with your startup in Silicon Valley or in LA, not going to do that. And same as Steve Jobs, he says that means nothing, right? He'll look at that as a little piece of information, but he'll say companies are often bad. NASA is often, whatever. They haven't been innovating in a long time. Okay, I'll do the math. The raw materials cost this much. They weigh this much. Gravity is this much. I think we can land a rocket. Maybe. I think we have a chance. And that's first principles reasoning. The first principles there are the laws of nature and the materials and the weight of them and the gravity. And with those, he said, the conclusion says, my math says this can be done. All that other information, about NASA, and so That's not, well, that disagrees with the first principles reasoning, so I don't care. Steve Jobs said, we have multi-touch technology now. They, if they're not doing it, it must just be because they suck. So, he's really, 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 really good at reasoning from first principles in the face of conventional wisdom that says the opposite of what his reasoning comes to. He's really good at saying, I guess conventional wisdom's wrong, and I'm going to put my money behind it and my reputation behind it. And even then we fail, I'm still going to stick with it because it seems like so. And likewise, then kind of layered on top of that is the other thing I was talking about is like this idea that failure is bad. And he's like, what's wrong with failure? Like, I'm going to die one day. Who cares if I like tried a bunch of projects and it's an experiment? And so again, overriding human stuff. So we all should be. He's not doing anything magical in that case. I mean, again, it's very impressive to do the engineering feat, but to try in the first place is a superpower just based on not being crazy like we all are. You could a totally different example of in my single days, I used to be, this is before the apps, frustratingly. So I'd be in a bar and I want to go talk to that girl. And a huge part of my brain's like, warning, like terrifying. You might get rejected. You might get, humiliated. And at some point I figured out that is nonsensical stuff from our tribal days, back when if you got rejected by one of the girls in the tribe, your reputation was ruined forever with the only people you'll ever know. And so I used to think of it like Grand Theft Auto, when you can just like drive over someone and it doesn't matter, it's not real. I was like, this is Grand Theft life. Let's pretend I'm in a video game playing this. Of course I would just go up and talk to her because who cares? Because it essentially is. It might as well be a video game in terms of how 0% it matters if this person laughs at me or rejects me or whatever. I will walk away and 3 seconds later, I will never see them again. And so I started just like being way more bold, and it served me so well. It's how I met my wife. It's like, so like, I would just like end up on all these like fun first dates from people who I just met just by like maybe a coffee shop, because I realized that like the fear is irrational. And so I developed a little mini superpower on something very small for my life. And it's the same concept. Now, I wish I could apply that everywhere in my life, because it was like that was the best version of me, is when I could tap into this ability to say, my fear makes no sense here. I'm just going to stop paying attention to it. And so I think we should all try to do that in so many different areas of our lives, because irrational fear holds us back in so many ways. So that's why that to me is Elon's superpower, beyond like the things he's good at. That to me is like why he's Elon.
Career. You wrote a great one about picking your career and how people should go about doing that. If you were to distill that down, I'd recommend people go read the totality of it. But if you were to go distill down like the way, if you're an 18 to 22-year-old that's trying to find, or maybe you're a 26-year-old and you're kind of aimless in your career right now, and you want to find something that you uniquely enjoy or get energy and passion out of, what would you recommend? What are the things that you would suggest for someone like that?
It's tough because 18 to 25, they are such precious years, because it is both the best time to not have a job and responsibilities and be settled and just travel and have fun and try things and date, and like it is amazing time for that. You'll never have a better time for that. You haven't even dug into your life. You also have no reason to have any money. There's no shame in having dirt poor. You can be, living on your friend's couch. No one cares. Like it is a beautiful time for that. It's also the best time to experiment with your career and figure out what you want to do.
To set the slope of the line of what can be.
Yeah, and if you do have an idea, if you know what you want to do, it's like if you start early and you can get a startup under your belt, it's a huge advantage. And so you can't waste the time. I mean, the only way you can waste the time is if you do, the worst thing you can do in that time is to do a job you don't like, that you're not learning from, in a career you don't really want to do just to like make money or something. That is a terrible, or being too concerned about money right now versus like money later. It's like, you don't need to be rich right now. Like it's such like a, so my business partner, Andrew Finn, and I started a test prep company. This is before we put why. And a huge advantage we had was we were just like, we're each going to take 40 and then maybe 50,000 a year for our whole 20s. And it's just, we just don't need much more. Everything got invested in the company. It would have been such a huge, it would have held the company back from growth so much if we needed to be rich dudes at 25. So anyway, as far as career goes, what I would say is, I say, first of all, having fun and doing life experiences and stuff, it does help you figure out who you are, and that is important. But like the best way to figure out what you want to do is to try a lot of things. Go apprentice for people. See if you can shadow people at work. Get different internships. Like if you have any kind of entrepreneurial spirit, like just start something. If you start a company in your early 20s and it just flops, there is zero shame in that. That if anything, if I hear about that person, I'm like, oh, cool person, I want to hear more from them. What are they going to do next? So I say this about dating. It's like people who sit there and they're like, if you wanted to get married, would the right thing be to sit at home and think on a spreadsheet about every quality you want and just obsess? So no, I'm going to get the perfect profile. No, obviously you go out and you go on 100 dates and something will eventually happen. So the same thing here is, I think it's, when you're 35, I think, by the way, 35-year-olds still should, more than they do, feel like my whole life's ahead of me. I'm going to go and try a bunch of things. But it's harder then, because a lot, you might have a family. You might now be used to a nicer lifestyle. Your friends might be doing more expensive things. You want to join them. So it's like, it is the best time ever to like just learn and try and learn as well. Like it's a good thing to remember that if you're 22 or 24 or 25, there's no skill or expertise in the world that you cannot still get. So like you might, think, oh, the people who are like physics experts, you may, oh, I didn't do physics in college. You still can, you go to grad school right now and you can become the world's leading physics expert by 40. You want to be, music. You can become an absolute master Yo-Yo Ma level cellist if you have the talent with the time you still have. So it's also like now granted, this, I can hear someone being stressed out by what I'm saying too, because the tyranny of choice. And it's like, well, why? I don't know. If I go to the cello and then 5 years later, now it's like I'm going and now I'm closing off all the other things. So should I be trying a bunch of things or should I be specializing? And there is no good answer. It's just that the good news is that if you're either having a lot of fun or you're really trying a bunch of things or you're learning something, you're digging deep in something that you might really want to do forever, those are all good uses. But a lot of people do none of those because they're doing a job that they don't like or they're just kind of living in their hometown because they don't really like it there. And it's like, no, do something that is serving the rest of your life, because 30s you, 40s you, 50s, 60s, 70s, we're all thank you for, and none of them, I don't think any of them will look back on you and be annoyed that you had so much fun either. I mean, I don't know, maybe some people say I should have started earlier and I was dicking around. I personally think that what is in the end all of this about? If you had amazing time for 7 years, that is itself a good. That is unless it really hindered you for the long run, I feel like that's like great. Some people never get 7 years of fun in their whole life, and you did. You win in some ways. So I'm not sure that's a satisfying answer.
No, it's good. I mean, honestly, it's a hard thing to internalize to figure out, but I think the pressure people feel at 22 to 25 to kind of get it sorted out. And it's scary to me to talk to the number of people at like 19 that think they want to be venture capitalists. And I'm like, why? Like, how do you possibly know that? Maybe, but like probably not. Shifting gears, so you wrote a long blog post in 2015 about artificial intelligence where you outline both the euphoric potential as well as the concern for building so much smarter than humans. Ironic timing, that was probably around the time OpenAI was founded. Did you know that was going on, the Puerto Rico meeting, and at the time of actually writing?
I think I probably learned about it after.
Okay, got it. It seems to me like people have a hard time internalizing AI being like euphorically good or bad. And I think what you wrote was something that was, one of the first very mainstream accessible things about the potential of it. So I want to read something that you wrote in 2015. When I'm thinking about this, the only thing I want is for us to take our time and be incredibly cautious with AI. Nothing in existence is as important as getting this right, no matter how long we need to spend in order to do so. But then I think about not dying. And then I might consider that humanity's music and art is good, but it's not that good. And actually, a lot of it is actually just bad. A lot of people's laughter is annoying, and those millions of future people aren't actually hoping for anything because they don't exist. And maybe we don't need to be over the top cautious, since who really wants that? So in the writing, you basically talk about like, hey, maybe it's all going to kill us, or maybe it's all going to save us, right? There's two different courses of action. Now we're in 2023, and it's pretty prescient today in terms of how it's held up. What, as you reflect on that and have watched AI evolve over the course of the last couple of years, do you agree that maybe we haven't been super cautious about
been cautious
okay, fair. So what's your perspective?
Yeah, so basically what I was saying then is that if you're thinking about the species, it's extremely obvious. If your concern is the human species, don't build it. Or if you're going to build it, spend 50 years worrying about AI safety first, then resume building. If I'm thinking about me as a non-religious person,
as a 41-year-old who has 50 years to figure this out, like, let's keep going.
Yeah, like it's not that I'm so scared of death. I just like life. I want to live for 50 centuries. And I'm like, if AI stopped today, I have no chance, I think. I think I'll probably, cryonics maybe send me to the future or at a time, but it's 5% or less chance that we can have some dramatic life extension technology. AI, I think, pretty high chance, actually. So if AI stopped today, so then I'm thinking like, if I'm just being totally rational and being a dick, like thinking selfishly, especially dick to all the future people, I'm thinking, let's roll the dice. What do I have to lose? I have 4 decades that I could lose, but I have 50, 100, 1,000 I could gain.
If humanity ends, I'm dying. And if humanity doesn't end, I'm not dying.
I'm having my own apocalypse in 50 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Either way.
Yeah.
So I'll take
if society goes out with me, then,
this is just pure game theory here.
Yeah.
I'll take a chance with the big apocalypse, since I already have an apocalypse coming, because whatever.
On a personal level.
And then but taking a chance with the big apocalypse is the only way we can maybe not have any apocalypse. So that was my thinking there. Now,
and the thought being, just to be crystal clear on it, that artificial intelligence is probably our best way to figuring out all the different things around. We talked about, gene replacements and whatever,
and
splicing,
everything else.
Sequencing, all that.
Solving we think people get stressed about climate change or poverty or disease. It's just all solved. And I read the Ian Banks Culture series. I read 6 of those books. Like, I yearn to live there. And maybe there's nowhere in the entire universe where something like that is able to happen for some reason or another. It's just not possible. But maybe it is possible. And it's just this utopia. It's a utopia where everyone is safe. You can live in any kind of space habitat you want. You kind of have conquered the galaxy. And you can do whatever you want with your time, and you can leave when you're ready. You get to die when you're ready, It just sounds awesome, especially, I'm sure once we were there, I'd be complaining about all the same things.
Sure.
We said hedonic treadmill, but still, and so AI actually is like, when I read a book like that, usually you're like, yeah, well, that's sci-fi. When you hear about the AI advancements, a little bit of intelligence advantage over chimps gives us the ability to build a civilization. They can't do shit like that. Think about equivalent advantage over us, or 100 times more of that. It's mind-blowing. You can't even talk about George Washington not being able to predict today. To predict a world where super intelligent AI is here, let alone what it's doing and building and the world it makes for us, or for itself that we live in, is beyond comprehension. And I'm curious, and it sounds like if it's good, it could be the best thing ever. Of course, people like Eliezer Yudkowsky and all the doomers, they would snicker at this, saying, dude, why would it be good? It's not that it's like they think the burden of proof is on the people saying it's going to be good, to say, you map out how this is not going to go badly with this non-human, super intelligent thing that does not inherently care about us, and we're so fragile, and our ecosystems are so fragile, and this giant thing with this huge footprint is coming, and
look at what we did to pigs.
Right.
Something's going to be a lot smarter than us.
Yeah, and we don't hate pigs.
Yeah.
We also do it to a million other species without realizing it. Look what we're doing to polar bears, in the Arctic with the climate changing. Like, the little things that could just totally destroy our civilization. You don't realize how fragile everything is until something way more powerful than you comes here. a lot of ecosystems that have been destroyed by us weren't fragile before we were here. They were actually robust, and they and then something with this footprint comes down and just starts mowing down trees and just changing the temperature and like boom, just so I get it. I also, a little part of me says, well, they don't know. Eliezer's a smart dude, but like they still don't know anything. We have no idea what this is going to be like. I get those arguments. And I guess part of the way I feel about them is, I don't necessarily disagree. It's that I kind of, as I said, I feel like in a lot of ways, selfishly, I don't have that much to lose. Now, unselfishly, when I'm not in dick mode thinking about the species, then I'm like, we should pay attention to the doomers. We should be cautious. They sound pretty, logical in what they're saying. And even if they're wrong, like, let's not do the dumbest experiment in history, as Elon likes to say about climate change. This is the even more dumbest experiment in history. Let's spend 50 years getting it right. So, very obvious. But I say my little primate brain is also very self-absorbed. And so that little part of me is kind of like, ooh, but I'm also kind of excited to see what happens. It's also just part of it is just like, it's just so interesting. I'm like, what super intelligence. Like, maybe it's going to be awful, but like, it's going to be so cool. I think it's Eliezer who says like, or someone says, we will have the apocalypse, but there'll be some great companies along the way. I'm like, well, those companies are going to be cool. Like,
Totally.
I'm like, I want to see how cool the phones are going to get.
Totally.
So,
rubbernecking on a highway is, it's interesting to see the car crash, right?
Exactly. I mean, I will say that the other day I did have, I think it was a dream or a thought, something where it was like, I learned that AI was going to be okay. Everything was going to be fine. And it's like, this was all overblown. And I felt this immediate emotion of like, oh, thank God. Which tells me that deep down somewhere in me, I'm like pretty scared and upset about this whole situation and like kind of wish it would go away and like would love someone to tell me it's going to be okay because like it is really scary, obviously. And so like, think like gun to my head, I probably press the like shut it down button if I have to. But also I think a lot of what people's opinion on this, it comes down to is who are they? I'm an optimist. I just am. I have a friend who says, I think AI is going to be fine because I was held as a child. I have no other good reason to say that. And like, that's a little how I feel. I'm like, I just kind of have a hope in general about the world and about the future. And I think that that's coloring how I feel. I couldn't really defend it. I would not want to go in like a debate against a doomer because I don't necessarily disagree with them. But I also don't feel confident that they're right. I just don't know. But I certainly don't have any good argument for optimism. Yeah. Like there's plenty of potential reasons for optimism, but I don't have like a strong reason why, no, optimism makes more sense here than, but I just kind of still feel that way.
What about Cryonics? We've touched on it earlier. We've talked about it a little bit. Are you actually signed up?
I am signed up. I have a life insurance plan, which is the way you do it. You just pay a couple $100 a year. It's like a term insurance plan, and then you can deal with the rest later. But
is your logic just why not?
Well, this is complicated because certainly it would be absolute no-brainer. Because I said burial, 0% chance of being woken up in a magical utopia in the future. Cremation, 0% chance of being woken up in a magical utopia in the future. Cryonics, non-zero chance, right? Like maybe it's 1%, maybe it's 5%. I might even put it at 5%. Don't underestimate the future. The future is going to be mind-blowing. So this is a way to toss your brain to the future. Pause it right before you die with all of your memories and personality in there. And toss it to the future and like think about how mind-blown George Washington would be by today. Like the future might be able to say, yeah, we can easily upload that to it. I wouldn't necessarily bet against it. Of course, a lot of things have to go right. The facility has to stay intact and like there has to be altruistic future. So that actually takes, treats you like a long-term patient, which is what they're phrasing it as. So a lot of things have to go right, but it's again, against what? Now there's this other, so otherwise I'd sign up and I would tell everyone I know, don't be an idiot. You spend this much on your phone every year, it's for potential like many more centuries.
Plus, it helps keep those business going and more people sign up, right?
Yeah, of course. I still have to do one thing, which is I have to get like the final form notarized before I'm officially a member. I'm paying currently, and I've been procrastinating. And the reason is, A, getting a notary is like the most icky thing ever. But secondly, there's this Black Mirror. I've seen too many Black Mirror episodes. And so there's a non-zero chance you come back and a much smaller, but still non-zero chance that you come back into the hands of a sick fuck who wants to torture you for 1,000,000 years. And that's true. It's it is a possibility. If you die normally, 0% chance. So it's about weighing, like, these are pretty big decisions to make. You're making a big decision for potentially millions of years of future you. And it's like, the upside is so good. The downside is terrifying, way scarier than death. Death is nothing in the face of that. The upside, I think, is way bigger. I just think what's the chances that future is going to be torturing their long-term patients? Future is going to be probably more evolved than we are. And like, even if it's an apocalypse, they also have these contingencies, by the way, that you can say if the government seems like it's going to go down and plug me, so it's so unlikely. But would I take is it worth taking a 1 in 1,000 chance of a million years of torture? It's easy to say, well, whatever, even in 1 in a million years of torture. What if you're in minute 12 of that and you think I have a million years of that? So Black Mirror has fucked me up a little bit. I still think I'll probably do it, but I just know that I'm not the only person thinking about this, and I want, when there's a bigger industry, they will for sure have some kind of safeguard against this, right? And I want that to happen. I want it to be a bigger industry with this problem very well labeled and identified and discussed in papers about it and solutions, so that like there's no way you're going to be left in the wrong hands. And then then it's back to no brainer. I still think right now, if I knew I was dying tomorrow, I'd be like, yep, Cryonics. But it's just a little part of me that's like icked out.
I don't want to ask you about your friend Elon and running Twitter and what all that's been like, but the product that is Twitter today, it feeds into are you still a big user of it?
I use it every day.
What's your perspective today of Twitter, the product, and are you optimistic about the future of it and where it's headed? Do you think it's sort of it is what it is, and we're always going to be dealing with the balance of trade-offs of vitriol with, whatever, the feedback loops and all the great reasons I use it and you use it as well?
I kind of see today's social media platforms as like flip phones. I think that the future us will look back and be like, oh, that was such a shit show. There were like mobs and there was like political junk everywhere and everyone was being nasty and it was like addictive. And I hope that this is like the Wild West phase when we just didn't know what to do. We didn't know how dangerous it was. It's causing depression, teen girls and all that. And I hope that we get to a place where we have like a way, like if I went in a time machine 10, 15 years, I'd hope to get out and be like, oh, social media is like awesome now. It's like everyone likes it now. Like, Steve Jobs, when he introduced the iPhone, said, one of the things, everyone hates their phone. And it's like, I forget that now, because I love my phone. It's like my favorite object. I think it's like, so, some people, of course, like don't like phones and don't like that. But I think it's just like, I just look at it, I'm like, you're so magical. It's like so crazy. It's like, you're so like incredibly well made and useful. And like, but I hated my phone before that. I was like, oh, it's so impossible to send a text and like this typing is slow. And so right now everyone hates social media, right? Or almost everyone. And I don't think it's going away, but I think that, so anyway, Elon, the reason I'm thrilled that he bought Twitter is because I think Steve Jobs entered the phone industry from outside and was like applying a bunch of like computer Apple principles to this industry and was able to reason from first principles and do something, right? Social media is harder because he's not starting, it's like this would be like if Steve Jobs bought Nokia, it's a little harder, but, and it's just, I think in some ways a harder problem in general than just making a good piece of hardware and software. But people like Elon. That's the person who I think is going to, be able to like, rather than little iterations on something that has some major fundamental problem, just come in and start to just get dirty and just, nothing sacred, throw away so I actually think, and I think a lot of people, maybe even he would say this now, like the blue check thing was not handled the perfect way. Like it could have kept verification, made it politically neutral, which it wasn't, and then also had like Twitter blue, right? Okay, that's my personal opinion. There's mistakes.
I agree with that.
And by the way, every first principles kind of innovator is going to just make some big mistakes along the way. So, but what I like is just, you see it's changing, it's iterations happening. It's just different. Oh, there's long videos now. And every week something new. That's what I want to see. I don't want the lazy, Twitter before had so many employees, probably way too many, and it was sitting around being lazy and like making the tiniest changes once a year or whatever. So yes, I want big changes to happen, and I want just innovation. And I think if one of these can become really good, like really great, and maybe Twitter could get there, then I think the other ones will copy. Like phones. If iPhone comes out, suddenly everyone's making a big glass screen and
App Store and all. Yeah.
yeah.
Last one before I let you go. What's one thing that's conventional wisdom or commonly held among people that you fundamentally disagree with?
Well, I mean, it's a little bit what we've talked about already, but like, I think it's conventional wisdom that I just had a baby, that she will probably live to be around 90 or 100. And I think if I had to bet, that's not likely. I think that
One way or the other.
yeah, this is crazy, but I was feeding her the other day, and she's like this little larva, and I'm like,
You said 12 weeks?
16,
16.
Almost 4 months, and I'm like, you are probably. It is a solid probability you die in the apocalypse. It's a solid probability you live to 500. It's also I'll give it another solid probability that we're overestimating all these changes, and that she does live to 94 and it lives in a slightly more futuristic world. I doubt it. I would give that less of a chance. I would give her having a normal life less of a chance than like really awful or really great. And I just don't think that we are wired to believe that, even if all the signs are saying that, if it doesn't fit with our life experience and that of our parents and grandparents. So we just look and we say, nothing that crazy.
Yeah. Why the world?
But at some point you hit that ADBC line with utopia, or you hit the apocalypse, and whoever lived in then wasn't thinking it was going to happen because it hasn't happened yet. So
did that consideration actually factor into having a kid or not?
No, because I'm a dumb human and I'm just like, I want to have a kid. You know, like if I'm thinking totally rationally, like maybe I wouldn't. But I'm just I also eat meat. Like I'm a hypocrite. We're hypocrites. At least I'm a hypocrite. So
no, I am too.
But even that said, with the meat, I'm like, this is obviously bad. With having a baby, I'm like, I don't know if it might be
the chance of 500. It sounds great.
Yeah, and it might be just like a super cool life to be living the next 100 years, or not. I don't know. But and as I said, like as a non-religious person, if she dies in the apocalypse at 30, I'm like, okay, well, she had her own apocalypse coming at 80 anyway, or 90. So like, it's not like the worst thing in the world. I don't know. Again, I don't want her to be tortured. Then I would, if I thought there's a chance of like of true deep suffering, like a high chance of that, then I wouldn't have a kid. But maybe AI tortures us. That would suck. You never know. Nothing is predictable. But like, I don't know. I don't think that. I think there's more upside than downside if the starting place is that we all expire in our first century right now.
Tim, thanks for doing this.
Thanks.
This is fun.